Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Happy holidays. We are back. I know it's not a Thursday, but it is Black Friday. Hope everybody had a great, happy Thanksgiving here in the States. If you're watching internationally, it's just another day for you. um, so Char, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. Lots to eat. Lots of good family time. And
Yeah,
how about you, Luke?
it was good. Um, Today didn't go the way I wanted it to, but that's for another conversation for another day. Um, but I'm just glad that I won't have to watch my team suffer on Saturdays anymore.
That's good. I mean,
Season's
it's gonna
over.
it's gonna
It's gonna free up
affect my
everything.
fantasy team, but
Oh, well, not that one. College team.
Oh, that's right.
Real quick. Hold on. We got our new banner behind us.
Me do.
Uh, um, Thanks to Aggressive Trash, I think is her name. I
I think
should
her
have
name is
learned it.
Aggressive Trash. I think that's her
Yeah,
name.
Aggressive
I
Trash.
followed her on TikTok and
Yeah,
I saw
she
that
did
she
an
posted it, and I was
yeah.
just overall impressed.
Yeah,
It was
she did an
amazing.
amazing job. So if you guys ever want something done, go follow her on TikTok and Instagram. She did an amazing job. And it didn't take her very long. If you guys can see the back of it, which you might be able to later, it looks really similar to us, especially Char's. I'd say Char's is more like him than mine is mine.
Yeah, I like it.
I like it a lot. But
when I when I show that to my friends, and they're like, "Oh my god, it looks just like you."
yeah, exactly. But guys, we are gonna get into it with two amazing guests tonight. We're gonna be talking Mandalore season 2, episodes 12, 13, and 14. But let's get into it.
You never would have made it as Obi-Wan's Padawan, but you might make it as mine.
All right, let's bring in our guests. Beth,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm well. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Very
This
good.
is her technically her second appearance on the podcast. She was on the community episode, but this is her first time talking Clone Wars, talking some Mandalore. She's our Mandalore lawyer for sure.
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian. You know what?
Mandalorian.
You should change yours and be like the Mandalorian. That would be a great new handle. If you ever want to rebrand, that you got to claim that now.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna have to go get it right after this.
Oh yeah, you have to. You might as well do it right now. I'm just telling you, you're gonna need it.
I'm on it.
Awesome. And Julia,
Hello.
how are you?
Good. I'm at my mom's house sitting in the creepy basement, shrouded in darkness, but I'm
hey.
very excited to be here to talk some Clone Wars. And Beth is here, and Beth, I love you. So this is
there you go.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a win-win situation. We're winning here. Yeah. It's a great way to spend your Friday night. To be out with all of us.
It is actually for me. This is the level of socialization I'm really comfortable with, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean this is great.
Yeah. Also, Julia, before we started, she said that she's got a picture of a what was it again?
The creepy little girl.
Okay, so chat, keep an eye on that.
Yeah,
let us know. Let us know nothing's
here.
happening over in that section
I'm
of the room.
I'm a little worried about it because it is pretty perfect paranormal activity vibes right now. So
oh yeah,
just keep an eye on that, please.
No, yeah, just keep an eye. All right, guys. Let's get into it. So we are going to be talking about season 2, episode 12, first Mandalore plot. Char, are you ready to go?
I am. I don't know about all of you guys, but just know that I am ready to go.
And do you have your 3 interesting facts? Are you doing the 3 interesting facts of each episode, or are you doing it of the whole entire arc?
The arc. Yeah.
Okay. I really, that was a hit. That was a hit last week. So just so you know, it was really good. I got a lot of positive feedback.
I'm glad that everyone liked it.
Let's jump into this, Char.
Let's do it. Let's dive in. First episode, Mandalore Lost. All right, let me read the plot summary for you. Yep. Let me take a second to plot summary. Okay, I got to do this 3 times. Usually, last week it was only 1, which made it a lot easier. But all right. So, are you ready?
Yeah. And
Diplomacy or deception? The Council of Neutral Systems speak for over 1,500 worlds who want to stay out of the war, but rumors have reached the Republic Senate suggesting that the Council's new leader, Duchess Satine of Mandalore, is secretly building her own army to fight for the Separatist cause. Now, Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi has been sent to Mandalore to discover the truth behind these claims.
good job, Char.
Mid.
I would say I'll be a little bit more critical. I think it was 8 out of 10. You missed a couple of spots, but you're good. You I see we're getting.
I got 2 more
progression.
chances. I got 2
You
more
do.
chances.
You do. So we
All right.
all don't have a
I mean,
grade.
technically, you have like dozens and dozens of more chances. 'cause You're only on season 2, so I feel like by the time you get to
I
season
got like
7,
a year.
it's gonna be
I got
like,
like 8.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we start off with Obi-Wan showing up to Mandalore. And honestly, this arc is probably one of my favorites. And I have a feeling we're gonna have a lot to talk about. I feel like this is gonna be just a amazing conversation in general. But I'm glad we're talking about it now, especially with Obi-Wan coming into the factor here in either in March or in May. I think we're gonna get a lot of callbacks to the Clone Wars, especially with possibly Satine showing up. So people that haven't seen this arc are going to get a lot of backstory that is going to be useful for them.
Absolutely.
So we start off, Obi-Wan shows up, and funny thing, the guard that shows up in that says that the Duchess is waiting, voiced by Matt Lanter.
Oh.
Wow.
I you know what? I just have I've watched Clone Wars so many times, but I can pick out the other the typical actor's voice, but it's a lot lower Matt Lanter voice, but it's him. So I thought that was funny. So he and Obi-Wan says, I never want to keep the Duchess waiting or something like that.
Be it for me to keep the Duchess waiting.
Yeah.
I think Beth and I could probably just, if you want us to do the whole episode, because when we were at Disneyland this past summer, we made so many TikToks of like the audios of Obi-Wan and Satine, and I think we pretty much just memorized the
Oh,
I'm gonna be I apologize. I am gonna be doing that the whole episode.
You know what? And that's gonna be great
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna I'm gonna need a refresher sometimes because I don't know the exact words, and I'm glad you're on top of it, Julia.
Thank you.
We got it down. Like the whole arc. We had some lawless moments. I know that's later, but like we're ready.
I'm telling you, the back and forth. I'm gonna need the back and forth when he gets captured because that's pure gold.
Yeah.
So Obi-Wan shows up. He talks to Prime Minister Almec first. Almec is pretty much like we've changed our ways. I don't really know. See, like when you watch the Clone Wars and this is like your first ever mention of Mandalore ever. And he talks about, we haven't been in our warrior ways for a long time. He never really like specifies when that really ended. So like when we see that, it's like jarring because it's like, because if you played the Old Republic, then you kind of know where that time period is. But like for a viewer that doesn't have any other context, it's like, what's going on?
Right.
Which I don't know if either of you have any more insight of when the Mandalorians really cut off from what they are now.
Like, what if both of us had detailed timelines? Like, how crazy would that be? But I was just going to say earlier, a little bit ago on Twitter, John Jackson Miller and Pablo Hidalgo were talking about the importance of using language in canon materials that doesn't necessarily like make really weird finite statements. So he showed an example of like novelization of one of the original trilogy books where it says this was only the second time Luke had left the planet, and like he's like, well, that just pretty much throws all the other creatives under the bus because now you have to deal with this very finite rule that you've created. And John Jackson Miller posted like, yeah, when I took this canon writing workshop, it was all about how the more kind of not vague, but like not using always, never, first time, last time, that stuff, unless it's sort of been agreed upon by the story group. And so I think the Mandalorian timeline falls into a lot of that, where they wanted to keep it open for future storytelling. And they also didn't want to sort of nail down any particular dates, because that really sort of boxes you in. And I think even now, we're later in The Mandalorian, it's like, when did the purge happen? When did Bo-Katan lose X, Y, or Z? Like, we might get dates for that eventually, but I think they try to keep that stuff open for as long as possible, because you just have so many more possibilities. That being said, I think fans have come up with a pretty solid timeline. And it's weird because it seems like that sort of whole war ended 15, 16 years ago. And the Duchess does have a nephew who is 15 or 16 years old. It seems like it's roughly the Corky age is how long ago this war ended. Just a weird little fun fact.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to that boy in a there will be mentions of that boy here soon.
Julia's boy.
Oh yeah, Julia's boy. It's like
it's my boy.
And you know what? I respect.
If the team doesn't want to claim him, I will do it. It's
no,
fun.
Absolutely. And you could use him as a write-off for taxes.
Exactly.
I mean, win-win, right?
Right.
So then Satine, I can't remember exactly what was said between Almec and Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan was like, he was wearing a, we had a separatist saboteur who was wearing Mandalorian armor, and Almec was like all defensive and
Jango Fett was a common bounty hunter.
Yeah, and that's where that was the first real canon thing of saying, Jango was not a bounty hunter, or not a bounty hunter, but was not a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And so that was nice when you first watch it, because it was still up in the air back in the day, because it was like, is he, isn't he? And that was our first really solid evidence that he was not a Mandalorian, which kind of muddied the water a little bit to what makes a Mandalorian, or what is a Mandalorian. So and this is the first episode that we get Jon Favreau, and this is the seeds of where the Mandalorian really became a thing in my eyes, because I mean, this is the first pairing of Jon and Dave. So this is just pure gold for me. So Obi-Wan, Satine shows up, and I mean, the back and forth between these two is just amazing. How they play a game of wits for a little bit, and they're being nice and all, and then all of a sudden it's like Satine kind of throws a jab that's not meaning to be hurtful, but Obi-Wan kind of takes it as that. What were your guys' takes on that back and forth?
I'm waiting for Beth to go because I don't want to just talk all the time. So
you can talk. I'm trying to think. I'm like, how do I extrapolate this? Like, having not like done it in real life. I'm like, what are my takes on that? I mean, how do I take that? I guess if I were to pick, like, where it's extremely charged, I would say you can see some resentment on both sides, if you will. I think, yeah, that's my initial. Those are my initial thoughts. Just very basic, but I'll let Julia go because you have stuff to say.
No, don't say. This was a mistake. This was a mistake. I did come home one time, and my mom was just like, she just had hung this. And I was like, okay. And so then it's now here.
Thanks,
and
Mom.
I just kind of have to deal with it when I'm home. But I would say, so it's interesting. It's kind of like trying to go back and remember the first time I watched the Clone Wars, which would have been in college, because I am actually a million years old. And so watching it for the first time and just feeling like it's very I mean, I'm teaching a Shakespeare class this semester. It's very Beatrice and Benedict for Much Ado About Nothing, if you're familiar with that play, where they have this sort of word play, which acts as flirtation, but also as a way for them to kind of vent aggression. And there's a couple moments in that play where they go too far and they sort of hurt each other's feelings, and they take the sort of wordplay into a place that's more real emotionally. So I think there's definitely a lot there that's inspirational, especially since Satine's look is very much reminiscent of, like, in some instances, a very Elizabethan look. So I think there's definitely like a Shakespearean thing happening with them. I would also say it's fun to see Obi-Wan's pretty standard style of dealing with people in terms of, like, he's very charming, he's very flirty, having that matched, and sort of it becomes more of like a equal battle, as opposed to quite often he's trying to flirt with someone like Asajj Ventress, who's like, I'm literally gonna murder you. Like, she might have fun with it for a little while, but she's not there to like have a fun little battle of the wits. So yeah, I would say it's definitely supposed to be reminiscent of, there's some tension there, it's charged, as Beth said. There's unfinished business. I think storytelling wise, they're presenting us with the sense that these characters know each other and have a history through how they speak to each other, and it's very efficient storytelling because they're not going through like, do you remember when we knew each other? Like, no, they're just sort of through the way that they speak to each other, letting the audience know that there's a history.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I got that too. And I think it's funny because you see this very much in even throughout the rest of the arc. Those two, I mean, when those two characters are on screen, you can definitely tell, like Julia was saying, that there has been history. Now, my question is, when are we going to get the official story of that history? That's the real question. Because from what I understand, Claudia Gray might be cooking up a little book that might be having to do with that. We'll see. Would you want to see that in book form, or would you want to see that in Kenobi somehow?
I think if it's Claudia Gray, if it's in the hands of one of the good writers who's able to really tap into like the emotion, especially on like Obi-Wan's side, because I think he's kind of difficult to tap in like headspace, especially via like the form of any sort of visual media. Then I would 100% want it in book form because I want to know what's going through his head. So yeah, and I mean Claudia Gray is amazing. So
and more Qui-Gon too.
Yeah, well, and I feel like she's the natural choice, because I've explained this like non-existent Obi-Wan You're on the Run novel as you just put Lost Stars and Master and Apprentice in a blender, and then that's what you get. So she's already sort of written the pieces, having to prove that you can write young Obi-Wan, like teen young adult Obi-Wan. She's already done that. She's done in the head of Qui-Gon, and I think the other challenge would be, I think E.K. Johnston would also do a good job. I think E.K. Johnston's would be best if it was primarily Satine's point of view, just because she writes characters like Padme, characters like Ahsoka, writes women from a really interesting point of view. Not that Claudia Gray can't, but I think hers would be, I imagine it as more of like a direct Master and Apprentice sequel. Masters and Apprentice, I don't know, Masters to Apprentice Boogaloo. That could work. I think a book would be great, but like I was saying about the timeline, when I've asked Pablo Hidalgo about this on Twitter, something he said is like, the Mandalorian stuff is like really like sort of not locked up, but like that's stuff where it's harder for authors to get access to that. And I asked E.K. Johnston about that. She said the same thing, where like she said she would love to write that book, but that the Mandalore stuff is like kind of off on its own right
limits
now. Not necessarily off limits, but I think harder to access.
Okay.
In terms of like pitching things or getting access to writing material for that. I'm guessing that's because of the show.
And that's what I was thinking too.
Dave and John have more direct control over that material. So based on my harassing of Star Wars people, that's what I've uncovered. And it actually makes a lot of sense because they're like they have more direct control over that. So, but yes, yep. I would love a book. I think a YA book would actually probably be a natural fit. Not that it couldn't be an adult novel like Master and Apprentice as well, but yes.
No, yeah. Char. You're muted.
Oh, what's up?
What are your thoughts on that question? What would you rather see a book of that year on the run, or their situation, their history? Would you want to see that on screen, or would you rather read that on a page?
I feel like it'd be better told as a book, because I know a lot of people want to see it on screen because it's an easier learning medium. But if you look at it from a book, you get way more details. You get to learn, you get to see both of their point of views. And I feel like if you use a book, you can go so much more in depth with both of them. So I think there's certain things that could be a movie, but in this case, I just think it would work so much better as a book.
Oh yeah, and I agree with all of you, because I feel
Yeah.
like I would want to know what's going into Obi-Wan and Satine's heads when they talk, because I mean, there's so many references in this arc.
Yeah, and like we
And
learned some of it about Satine and Obi-Wan in Master and Apprentice. Like we only
yeah,
learned a little bit about it, but I just want to know a little more just about them, like just those
yeah,
two
absolutely. I think
specifically.
this is why this is one of my favorite arcs, because it's like you don't Obi-Wan is very mysterious
Yeah.
in his past, and we didn't really know a whole lot, to be
Yeah,
honest
and
with you.
it's funny because you see him in the prequels, and you just see this very honorable, just regular Jedi, just like everyone else. But in
Yes.
Clone Wars, you get introduced to like he has a past, he had a relationship, he had a love interest, he had all of this stuff prior to what we see him in the Phantom Menace. It's
Yeah.
cool.
God, Camilla is coming in with the
Yes.
hot. I agree.
Yes.
Adapted. And you know what? That
She's
would
right on the
sell
money.
like hotcakes. Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
Well, that's the thing
Eh,
about the Obi-Wan Satine story, is that I think there's a lot of demand for it. Like I think
oh
it's
yeah.
very popular, and because of that, it's something that they could do very easily. I was also going to say about point of view. I love Qui-Gon's point of view in Master and Apprentice. I'm obsessed with
Yes.
being in his head, and I do desperately need to know, because I feel like Char, like you were saying in terms of the Obi-Wan we see, the tragedy is that if Obi-Wan and Anakin had connected on this issue, like there would have been such an opportunity for Anakin to realize that, like,
I can have somebody to go talk to.
right. And also I think it probably would have encouraged him to like leave the Jedi. Like I think Anakin, that would have given him permission to like leave the Jedi Order and just like have a family and do what he, but knowing that is something, like the fact that they never really talk about it in depth in in Voyage of Temptation, which we'll get to, they have a little bit of talk about it, but I want to see Qui-Gon witness what this sort of relationship unfolding, and I need to see what he thinks about it. I also need to see what he teaches Obi-Wan, because
See?
I'm curious if what Anakin hears from Obi-Wan, if that's Obi-Wan directly reiterating what Qui-Gon told him, or if he's like done a complete 180 and is telling him the opposite of what Qui-Gon said to him. And I need to know like the lineage of like, how did Qui-Gon teach non-attachment? I desperately need to know that,
Oh yeah.
because by the end of Master and Apprentice, their relationship is finally healing. I feel like they're really on the same page as Master and Apprentice. And then I think it would be very funny for their next big mission after Pajal. It's like they're finally gelling, like Obi-Wan's making progress, then it's like womp womp. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just another like young royal we have to protect. We do that all the time, and we get there and it's like Qui-Gon immediately is like, uh-oh, like this is going to be a challenge. Like Obi-Wan is finally on the way up in terms of progress. Like I feel like we're connecting, and then all of a sudden there's this huge wrench thrown into it, and it's like the challenge for Obi-Wan. Anyway, I'm just like pitching my version of the book now, and I will stop.
Dude, if I was Disney, I'd greenlight it,
Yeah.
because I want to see the same thing too. Saint Pat says he needs. I see. That was gonna be my next thing. Like, I want to see more Qui-Gon. I think Qui-Gon is a very underrated character. Yes, and honestly, he's very important to the story. Movie wise, he's there for a movie. He's meant as a plot point to get Obi-Wan to where he needs to be throughout the entire saga. Now, I need to know. I just need to know. I just need a short story, or not. Maybe not even a short story. A novel about Qui-Gon after Dooku.
Jedi Lost?
No, well, I think it would be like when he's Dooku's apprentice, because I'd
Okay.
like to see a little bit more of Dooku and Qui-Gon's relationship, because I feel like Dooku is very much to the point.
Well, yeah, and Dooku and
little bit.
Qui-Gon are the exact same people. And
Yes.
that deleted scene in Attack of the Clones, it's actually a canon scene with them talking about the Lost
Jocasta.
20. Yeah, when
Yeah.
she says that Dooku and Qui-Gon are idealists, they're exactly the
Yeah.
same. And I feel like it would be cool to understand how both of them kind of worked around that, and
Yeah.
how
Oh, yeah.
and if they believed in the Council or they just listened to the Force, just like how
Yeah.
Qui-Gon does in the Phantom Menace.
And I
Yeah.
love the scene in Master and Apprentice where you see what does divide Dooku and Qui-Gon, and it's the dark side. Like Qui-Gon
Yeah.
has a line, and that line is the dark side because he sees his master use Force lightning and like murder this woman, and he's horrified. And so many people read that scene, he's been like, "Wow, Dooku loves Qui-Gon so much." I'm like, no, that I don't think you're
Nope.
supposed to read that scene that way. I think
Yeah,
that's
and then when you read that and you look back at the scene where Dooku imprisons Obi-Wan on Geonosis,
Yeah.
and then Dooku's like, Qui-Gon would have been very useful to me. And then Obi-Wan's like, Qui-Gon Jinn would have never joined you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
And I was like, yeah,
point
there
A
you go.
right
There's your
there.
context.
Yeah, exactly. This like, yes, being willing to like follow your ideals and not wanting to like be beholden to the council is one thing.
Yeah.
But like even Rael Alvarez had his line as well where he's like, no, like I'm a maverick, but I'm not evil. Like, you know, doesn't mean I wanna. Now I'm just talking about Master and Apprentice. Beth, I will just keep talking. You need to please don't do this to me.
No, I am enjoying it. Go
I can't shut up disease. It's chronic.
I have
Hey,
it
in this
too.
case, it's not a bad disease.
It's not a bad thing because you know what? You're just
We're
you're
here
just
to
spitting
talk.
facts.
Yeah,
we're here to talk. So back to we haven't even gotten 5 minutes into it, but we're just gonna we're gonna roll with it. So Obi-Wan shows her the hologram of the figure in the Mandalorian armor, and Satine assures that they have this all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gang called the Death Watch. They're just a bunch of hooligans putting pain and stuff.
The Death Watch. That
the Death Watch.
No importance after the Clone Wars.
No importance at all. So
oh, hi Din, how are you?
So man, you got me distracted now. Dang it, Char. Man, now I'm really off my game. Hold on.
No, you were on Death Watch.
Yeah, Death Watch. So him and Satine go out into the garden, right? And she's telling Obi-Wan about this group, right? And they think that they've gotten them tracked down to Concordia, which is the moon. It is an off moon of Mandalore. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So then we actually cut to Concordia and we get our first look at the Death Watch, or Pre Vizsla, voiced by Jon Favreau. And he's talking to Dooku, and Dooku's basically giving him the of what eventually happens in season 7. Here you go. This is what's going to happen. The Republic's going to show. It's basically he basically uses the same manner of what the Republic uses in season 7 to get Mandalore. Yeah. And I thought that was like, ha, Dooku. I wonder who gave you that idea. I wonder. And Pre Vizsla is very kind of just like, hey, like we gotta. Should we really be doing this? Like and Dooku's like, just roll with the punches, man. We got this. Like, just follow the plan. We'll get it done. Back on Mandalore, Satine and Obi-Wan are touring down the gardens, and then there's an explosion. Why not have an explosion with Obi-Wan right there? And Satine's the first one that actually goes up to the injured, which, if you think about it from a hierarchy standpoint, you don't usually see that from a lot of like royals. They aren't ones that they're more or less, they have to get to the safest area. So seeing that was very telling, because that's who she is as a person, as a character. She's very much, and you can tell that she cares and that she's not with the old Mandalorian way. And she's a pillar of that. And then Obi-Wan grabs her and tells her to basically run. And he's like, I want to question everybody here. And the guy looks straight at the guy, and the guy is like, peace. He's like, stop that guy. And he points. I'm like, why are you pointing? Take off after him. And
Detective Obi-Wan is on the case.
Yeah. Detective Obi-Wan. I wonder who it is. Oh, wait, it's the guy looking straight at me. I better tell him not to run. Oh, he's gonna run? Oh, this should be fun.
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, so he corners the assailant. The assailant commits suicide. And this is the bombing, and then the suicide is what sets in motion what happens. This is the downfall of Mandalore.
Yeah.
These are the first bricks to fall for Mandalore, and it's so strange because we know what happens in the future. To see that this is the reason why Mandalore goes down, and it's all because of the Death Watch. When if they would have just been able to compromise and work together and not have separate sides, they wouldn't. I think they would have been a little bit stronger force and would have been able to push the Empire back later down the line.
Yeah.
But what were your guys' thoughts on that whole scenario that happened? Beth, we'll go with you first.
Oh, sure. So I think one of the things that I found interesting is, I guess, and it's a concept that is technically in Legends, but they're like starting to bring it in canon. But how you were talking about kind of the drastic differences between like the new Mandalorians and then Death Watch, and like the extremist differences between the two, and that's like part of the downfall. Is the fact that I'm really curious to see if they end up bringing in the true Mandalorians, who have like the warrior ideals and like they respect their heritage, but it's not like the violent extremism that Death Watch has. And so I'm really curious to see. They were a faction that broke off in the non-timeline specific Mandalorian civil wars.
Yeah, in Legends, wasn't Jango Fett a part of the true Mandalorians?
Yeah,
so when he was under Jester Muriel.
Yeah, Jester Muriel was the leader, and then Jango Fett, Jester Muriel was his mentor. So
yeah.
I'm curious to see if that ties into Book of Boba Fett. But I'm off topic.
No, we've been on topic.
We get in The Mandalorian, we get a Jester Muriel reference in his chain code, if you translate his chain code. And Boba says his father was a foundling. Now, he doesn't say his father was a Mandalorian, and I think that that's really important because a lot of people want to force an identity on Boba that he himself is the only person. If he doesn't want to be a Mandalorian, he doesn't have to be. And I think it's crucial that we don't. There's a sense of like, well, like I don't like Bo-Katan, but she's not gatekeeping Mandalorian culture from him because he doesn't identify as a Mandalorian. And I love the differences there in terms of culture. But yeah, he says his father was a foundling and fought in the Mandalorian Civil War. So we're getting some of that. And I love, like Beth, you said, bringing in, because the true Mandalorians not existing in canon has created a lot of problems. But it is also, I think, important to recognize that as of right now, the faction doesn't exist. And so there's a lot of blame placed on Satine particularly for not including a faction that doesn't canonically exist. And that kind of gets on my nerves where people are like, well, why didn't you just, I'm like, because I don't think they exist in canon. But that's a really good point where like, if there was this sort of common medium ground, that would have been a natural answer. And I almost like that we don't have an easy answer. We don't have a natural solution in the form of compromise. And Mandalore destroying itself from within seems like, yeah, that's kind of how it would go. Like that's their history, is fighting each other to the point of like destruction. And trying to stop that is seen as radical. And I just think that's so interesting.
And the crazy thing you mentioned earlier was about Jango Fett, and there's really not much about Jango Fett in canon other than some mentions in the TV shows and Attack of the Clones. That's it. Yep.
And a chain code that you have to, a chain code that you have to go and translate using Mandoa. Like if they don't put it in the show, like you have to pause it and read it and then go translate it, and it might just be an Easter egg. But like, I'm really hoping Boba Fett gives us some more. Like I want to see Boba embracing and his identity, not just as a clone, but as like a pseudo Mandalorian, and like what I just think would be so interesting to see him explore. So,
no, yeah, absolutely. So they go down and see the where the guy lands, and he says something. Is it in Concordian or in Mandalorian language? I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's the language of Concordia.
Speak on our moon, Concordia.
Yeah. So it's Concordia, and And Obi-Wan says, "I'm gonna have to go to Concordia," and she goes, "Yeah, I'm going to, because I mean, you were just part of a death." And he goes, I didn't kill him." And she goes, "Yeah, I know. That's why I'm still talking to you."
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, the guy just can't win. He just can't win with her.
No, and we were mentioning earlier about how she goes up after a bombing. She's like running up to where the bomb went off, and I'm thinking, God, that year on the run must have just been like, well, I'll just go talk to the tribal chieftains, and everyone's like, no, and he has to like chase after her and like stop her constantly from doing dangerous things. And I do find that very charming to imagine. She's like, I'll just jump off this cliff. He's like, and just has to stop her for a year.
Oh yeah. So Obi-Wan and oh yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, he gets a ton of practice with Anakin. He's like, "Oh, it's like Satine in male form. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think I know how to deal with this a little bit." So they both travel to the moon Concordia and are greeted by Governor Pre Vizsla, who the audience isn't supposed to know is the bad guy, but if you know, you kind of know, like if you know the sound. So he basically it introduces himself, gives him a little bit of background on who he is, and I think it's very interesting how he plays it off like he typical guy undercover. Oh, you can't believe anything that is being said of the Duchess Satine, where he's thinking, yeah, this lady, we're gonna get her. Don't worry, we're gonna get her. So Obi-Wan, they talked about the mines on Concordia and how I believe it's the way I understood it is that the mines were the reasons on Mandalore why their environment is the way it is, or is that Concordia? I couldn't remember.
So Beth, you can take this one. I feel like you know more about this.
You can. Oh no, it's fine. No, go for it.
Well, I was gonna say I think it's part of the what exactly happened to Mandalore is another thing where like they've been very vague about it. There have been references to like Satine running through the grass on Mandalore, and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like it's been destroyed for a lot longer than that, just because of the cities, the dome cities, and their development would have taken longer than 30 something years. But I do feel like, so in Rebels we see so I just watched Rebels for the first time a couple months ago. We see they're on this sort of, you actually get to see the surface a little bit better in terms of like just the sandy nothingness, and Sabine describes what it used to be like, and you see what I assume are trenches, right? Like I feel like in Rebels you see what look like trenches dug into the earth, and so I've always assumed it's a mix of warfare and mining and you know, a lot of different things. But I don't know that we have a canon answer, but I think a lot of it is just like years and years of like trench warfare, which is what you see in Rebels in the actual ground, which I thought was interesting.
No, yeah, because I remember she mentioned something, and that's why Obi-Wan is like, I gotta go check out these mines and see what's going on, because and I love how he gives her the earpiece, like, just in case you get in trouble. I mean, I don't expect to get into any trouble, but I know for sure you will.
Yeah.
So let's just keep these on. So he travels through. He gets on a speeder bike, takes off, and he gets there. Pretty much just presses a button, is able to get in. And I'm like, man, this hideout. It's like, oh, we're not gonna try to hide anything, which makes sense because if you hide something, like it's gonna make you guilty. So he goes in and he sees all this Mandalorian equipment, like jetpacks, Mandalorian helmets. Now, my thoughts are, at this point, Beskar it's not as rare as it is in during the reign of the Empire, correct? So they're able to make it's more accessible. So that's what was my first thought. I was like, oh wait, hold on, how are they able to do that? And then I was like, oh wait, that was like 30 years down the line. Sorry. And then so when I thought about that, I was like, oh well, that's interesting. They do have a lot of Beskar, so that makes sense. and Obi-Wan ends up getting attacked by he gets caught. Guy gets caught. It's not very sneaky. He ends up getting into a scuffle, sort of wins, and then gets overpowered. He he makes contact with Satine, and this particular conversation is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And just the way she plays it off by he's like, Satine, I need you to go to this location. And she's like, it's kind of hard to do right now. It's just like, so about the earpieces, you're gonna have, good thing you have them because I'm in trouble, not you.
Yeah.
I just found that really funny because it's like he gave them to her because he thought she was gonna get in trouble. But what were your guys' thoughts on that conversation between those two?
Beth, if you're not going to talk about Mandalorian Guernica, I will.
You can, Julia. You're the expert on that.
So this is not related at all to what you were saying, Luke.
Okay.
But in Pre Vizsla's office, he has a painting mural, and it is basically the Mandalorian version of Pablo Picasso's Guernica, which is a anti-war painting. Basically, Picasso's like magnum opus on like the horrors of war. And the Mandalorian art style is very modern. So we have Picasso references. We have a lot of like even more Cubist references in the way that they sort of portray their art. And you have this painting, like if you look up Guernica and you look up this painting, very clearly a reference. And I just love the fact that Pre Vizsla has an anti-war painting. Now, I'm assuming it's an anti-war painting because it's based off of Guernica. That being said, I think it's a really good example of how I'll just say fascist imagery can be used, like even like anti satire, that stuff can be used against it. And it's funny that this painting is probably, like, I like to imagine it was created to show the horrors of war, but because it shows the horrors of war, it also represents for Pre Vizsla a lot of the like honor of the past that he wants to return to. And I just love these little details in the Clone Wars where someone took the time to be like, you know what would be fun? Mandalorian Guernica. And then they created that and then they put it on the wall just as like a fun little art history reference. The painting then later in season 5 is below the balcony when they're like jumping in the clouds. It gets moved there. So it's very clearly being used as like a pro, like traditional
Mandalorian,
reactionary Mandalorian reference. And I just think that's so interesting to me that they have this, because Mandalorian art is such a huge part of their culture that, like, yes, they would have this history of war representing itself in their art. And I just love that little reference. And so if you've never looked at the two paintings, definitely take a look at them. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I that's really interesting because it's like when you do mention that, that's like I'm gonna have to rewatch that again because that's an interesting thing. But I thought it was hilarious how Satine says, "Oh, Master Kenobi is just meditating." Okay, I mean that's a good cover because they do meditate a lot. So nice job, Satine. You were on the run with 2 Jedi for about a year, so that makes good job, good thinking off on your toes. And she says that he's gonna join them in a couple of minutes, and then they start talking back and forth, and she realizes, so I'm gonna have to go real quick, but I'll be back. And she takes off on the speeder, and she gets to Obi-Wan. She, if I remember correctly, she gets caught as well, or maybe she doesn't. I can't. It's very vague. It's very blurry. I think a lot of the turkey got to my brain today. But the funny is like just watching them bicker at each other when she's trying to save him. And he's like, "Come on, Satine, are you hitting the right button? I'm gonna die if you don't hit the right button." And it reminded me a lot of Anakin and Padme in a way, because Anakin in a lot of ways, especially the droid factory in episode 2, because Anakin's more or less just like worried about Padme, and he tries to jump in and save her, and it just all goes to hell. And I thought that was an interesting nugget there. So she ends up saving him. She says something about now we're even, I believe. Or is that later on in the episode? Because I think it gets referenced twice.
I think it's later.
They have that great exchange. The for a man sworn to peace, you take an unseemly pleasure in the injuries of others, and then for a woman sworn to non-violence, you don't seem trouble. I could have been killed. That's such a great exchange.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Because later he says, "Well, mine was the more daring of the two rescues."
Yes.
When he's describing us finally leaving. Yeah.
Again, you have a lot of
it's
flirtatious. The guy knows how to flirt. I tell you what, like he's the best. If you want to learn how to flirt, watch Obi-Wan and the Clone Wars.
That's true.
You just do. You'll pick up some pointers. So they end up they get into an elevator. They go down, and Obi-Wan instantly, like, they see like the whole Death Watch camp, and Obi-Wan says, "Oh, this is definitely not where we entered." And I'm like,
this is not the way we came in. This is a problem.
This
is actually a problem. Now that I'm thinking about it, is the lines and the way they are said is just stuck in my brain, and I don't know how they got in there like that.
Well, it's because you and Beth were doing them at Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to. Anything for the content.
Exactly.
So I believe their Death Watch henchmen go after the two. Obi-Wan takes them out pretty easily. And as Pre Vizsla's walking towards them, he just ganks one of them. Just straight up, you fail. Bam. Yeah. I was like, gangster vibes.
Yeah.
For sure, gangster vibes. And I was like, that's pretty ruthless. But then again, it is Pre Vizsla. And he takes off the helmet, and Satine's like all like, like, how dare you? And Obi-Wan's kind of like, makes sense. That guy didn't have a very good aura around him. And this is the first time we see the Darksaber. First canon showing of the Darksaber. And he gives us a background. It's the same as the Legends. The canon version is very close to the Legends version, if I'm not mistaken, Beth. Like its origins.
Its origins, the fact that it was created by Tar Vizsla prior to 1032 BBY.
Yep.
That he was for sensitive Mandalorian induction to the Jedi Order as a child. Yeah. It's similar. It's basically the same. Like, we don't have a ton. That's the thing, is we don't have a ton of like Legends information about the Darksaber. It's pretty much all this canon. It's very, very, very little context. Which is good, but then also bad.
Yeah.
And apparently it only exists because George Lucas said that a vibroblade couldn't deflect the lightsaber. And then they had to create a Mandalorian lightsaber, and like all of his backstory has come from the fact that George Lucas was like, no, you can't do that. A vibroblade can't deflect it. Sorry, this is my bad George Lucas impression. I'm so sorry, George. You can't do that. Don't deflect.
You can't do that.
That's not how lightsabers work.
Harder, more emotion, harder.
That would negate the canon.
Yeah, so and it's just, and so they had to create it like out of scratch, and now we have all this beautiful. And so when people say things like, "Oh, planning," I'm like, there's beauty in like the way that things just like appear. Suddenly they have this like very cool Mandalorian Darksaber that needs a backstory, so they write an amazing backstory for it, or like give it this like Excalibur like sort of vibe. And I just love little stories like that because it shows how much of Star Wars is sort of luck of the whatever happened to had to happen there. And but Beth is the Darksaber expert, really. So
yeah, that's why I defer to her when it comes to the Darksaber. But so Pre Vizsla kind of like is like big shot, throws Obi-Wan his lightsaber, and I'm like, dude, if you were a real villain, you would have taken him out. Just why? Stop being so honorable. Like, you're a villain. Stop being so honorable. And then he gets his butt kicked, and I'm like, what do you think was gonna happen? Obi-Wan's like one of the best duelists in the entire Jedi Order. Like, what do you think you're doing? It's interesting because after Obi-Wan beats him, he tells the rest of the Death Watch to obviously kill Kenobi because he couldn't. If I'm not gonna win honorably, I might as well win by force, by force and arms. And Obi-Wan and Satine ultimately jump down the turbo shaft. He's like, Satine, we gotta go, and he like grabs her and just is like, all right, we're jumping, because right before they jump, or after they jump down, the missiles hit, and I'm like, so this is a callback to year one. There's got to be something similar that happens because, like like this whole conversation is just gonna go back around to us talking about how we need this in a story.
Yeah. Well, she jumps into his arms like it's no problem.
Yeah.
Like she just like launches herself right in there, like she's done it a million times. So yeah, it's definitely like something they practiced.
Just like we did 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan, they land, and Obi-Wan, and they land on top of each other. A little weird.
Well, that's how you let 10-year-olds know that they like each other.
Yeah, apparently. I'm like, so quirky.
Yeah, that's like, I'm not kidding. Like them accidentally like landing at like, what's the Anakin and Padme rolling around in the grass in Attack of the Clones? It's not code for 10-year-olds to be like, ooh, you know what I mean?
Ooh, they
like
they're in love.
Yes,
they
exactly.
like each other.
Exactly.
So that's what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was like, it was so funny because I saw that and I was like, all right, Dave, very well done. I get the point. I mean, it's a kid's show, but you got adult undertones. That's one of them. Good to see. And so they make it back to Mandalore, and they're going to the because they're heading to Coruscant now. And Satine is very adamant about staying out of the war, which she represents 1,500 different neutral systems, which in a galaxy of millions upon millions of systems, 1,500 are willing to be neutral, which is interesting because we've dealt with neutral parties before back in season 1. And so that was interesting. And Obi-Wan and her kind of have that little back and forth again, and then he sees Anakin, and this is where you just want to like shake Obi-Wan, like shake both characters to be like, talk to each other. You are more alike than you know. Like you've gone through the same things. And Anakin, I can't remember exactly what he says. He's like, "Oh, you look tired," and Obi-Wan goes,
"The Mandalorian's peacekeeping way." Yeah.
Yeah, the ways of the locals wore me out.
Yeah.
And Anakin's like, "Oh, that's interesting." And he's like, "Don't." And I just feel like Obi-Wan's got that face of like, "Don't ask."
Yeah.
And that's how that episode ends. And it moves straight into Voyage of Temptation, which is one of my favorite standalone episodes. I absolutely love the shit out of this episode. It's very, very, very awesome. Char, ready for the plot summary for that?
I am actually. Are you ready?
Yep. 3, 2, 1.
A royal welcome! Sent to investigate allegations that Mandalore was joining Count Dooku's separatists, Obi-Wan Kenobi was reunited with an old friend, the Duchess Satine of Kalevala. Or Kalevala, did I say that right? Kalevala?
I don't think we've ever heard it said, so who knows?
Oh, yeah. While Satine claimed Mandalore's intentions were to remain neutral during the war, an attack on the capital city led Obi-Wan to the discovery of a terrorist organization known as Death Watch. Now the Duchess travels to the Senate so she can plead her case against her involvement in the war, as the Jedi prepare a defense against her opponents.
Good job, Char. Very well.
I'll never be Tom Kane. I just have to accept it.
You're pretty darn close. You're pretty darn close. So they're aboard the Coronet, and Obi-Wan and Anakin have a brief the clones on the situation. the clones and R2, which, by the way, R2, I don't know about all of you. R2 is my favorite. He's one of my favorite characters. He's my favorite droid. The guy always comes in clutch, no matter what. If you need something to be done with a ship, you need backup, he's always there. He's always there. He's the most dependable guy and the most dependable droid in all of Star Wars, and I will not hear anything else of it. So Anakin instructs R2 to stay down with the clones to make sure that everything is all right. They then they're told that Satine is requesting Obi-Wan's, well, the Jedi, but more importantly, Obi-Wan's presence. Yeah. And Anakin, so they get into the elevator, and Anakin goes, I'm sensing some anxious. You're kind of anxious. Like, what's going on here?
The Duchess couldn't be in safer hands.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. What are you worrying about, Master? Like, she couldn't be. Come on. And Obi-Wan just had those two crack me up. That conversation that they have cracked me up.
No, that was funny too, because when you look at that scene, it mirrors the scene from Attack of the Clones when they were in the elevator, but it's just role reversed.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
it's awesome.
It is so funny. It's like Anakin's like been waiting. It's like, I've been waiting for dirt on you ever since that day you talked about Padme. I got you now. So, what were your guys' thought on that little back and forth between Anakin and Obi-Wan? It's very brief, but there's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
That's like peak Anakin. I feel like that episode is just like peak Anakin and Obi-Wan. And just, I feel like it's the first time it really humanizes Obi-Wan in the eyes of Anakin. When he's like, oh my God, you went through a similar thing. But I think he as opposed to like being able to like bridge the gap and like emotionally sit with it and be like, I'm gonna try and connect with you on this. He's like, haha, this is funny. Like it's like almost like a self-defense mechanism for both of them, where they're just kind of like, yeah, it's funny, you know.
Yeah.
But that moment and just anything in the elevator with them in that episode is just like peak Obi-Wan and Anakin, and I love it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I knew her a long time ago.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan gives us details like very, like he takes him a long time to give us any actual information to like tell Anakin anything concrete, which I think is very Obi-Wan of him to be.
Oh yeah, that's very on character. I mean, look at what he didn't give hardly any details to Luke in A New Hope. So it's very on point and on character for him not to say absolutely anything. Give as little detail as possible, Obi-Wan. That is your job.
Exactly.
So they make it up to the main audience chamber, and they announce themselves, and Satine says, I'm sure all of you are aware of I can't remember exactly. You two gotta know what she says. Come on.
Collection of half-truth and hyperboles.
Yes.
Known as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes. Yeah. And you just can see Obi-Wan go, okay, here we go. Here we go again. And we see that they have another she's as they walk in, and she's pleading her case against the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the politics starts to come in, and you see the differing of opinions between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes very, very deep, and she does cut hard a little bit at Obi-Wan, saying, well, yeah, you guys are peacekeepers, but now you're general. Why have you sold your souls to defend everything when that's not what what your order is supposed to be like? And Obi-Wan is saying, well, if we don't do it, who will?
Yeah.
And I found that, and that's so hard because you have that conversation because they do deep down love each other. And I like I said, we're gonna need to. There's got to be a sequel, or would it be technically a prequel or a sequel to Master and Apprentice?
Sequel.
A sequel. Okay, that's what I thought. Char, thoughts on that back and forth and by the way, Tar is there, and he's the absolute worst senator.
I
and
hate
I will
Owen
hear
Fritar.
no it. I will not hear any of it. He is as useless as a poopy flavor lollipop.
He's just there.
He's just there as a plot
and he's the
device.
reason why Ryloth is not changing at all.
Yeah, but Char, what are your thoughts?
I thought it was great. I mean, it's just typical Obi-Wan Kenobi. Just and then it was like Obi-Wan and Satine. They're kind of they're very similar to each other when in terms of communication. Because Satine kind of talks like him, and obviously everyone knows how Obi-Wan speaks.
Right.
And then it's just like and then they're trying to like have like the better point, and then they just keep on stacking on top of each other. Not physically, but like you know what I mean.
No, yeah. Beth, what are your thoughts on the back and forth?
It's perfect because I think when you have a character like Obi-Wan Kenobi who is so revered within the fandom, anytime you're thinking of giving him any sort of like love interest or whatnot, you have to have somebody who can match him because that's like such a big ask. And I think being able to match him on like an intellectual level that's just like brilliant writing. B, it's hilarious. And C, it does humanize him when he's like, oh my God, I can't like beat this person. This is the first time I can't like negotiate my way out of anything. So I think it was just like a great character decision to have that be how they're equals.
And a great character decision was that having Obi-Wan fall in love with royalty, just like how his apprentices, they both have a love interest with royalty, and it's like a cool way for them to connect with each other and be like, oh, we're this is happening and Padme's doing this, and I thought it was brilliant to have not just someone who is an equal to Obi-Wan, but someone who is very similar to Anakin, or Obi-Wan and Satine being so similar to Padme and Anakin.
Oh yeah.
It was brilliant.
I will say something that I think in my mind really differentiates Satine, and I think maybe explains why they aren't together, is that I think there was not a willingness to compromise on their values in terms of like what they chose, whereas Anakin and Padme were willing to like have this secret part of their lives and
bend the rules.
And it that wasn't something they were willing to do. And like the idea that I just think it's really fun to see relationships or couples that deeply love each other, but they don't end up together. And I think it can be very easy in storytelling to have a very simplistic understanding of relationships, especially in stories like Star Wars, which are sort of for everyone. Like, you don't have to end up happily ever after with someone that you have a very strong past with, that you love, that you have a history with. Things happen, and especially since they're so similar, like being a Jedi is everything to him, and she wasn't going to abandon Mandalore. So what are their options here? And I think it's really telling that they chose to serve other people as opposed to their own interests, and thinking of that as something that Anakin, I think, especially was not willing to do.
No,
like, he needed that part of his life, and he was willing to do a lot to sort of get around that. And I think it's unfortunate to me that Padme as a character seems to the writers seem to kind of make her less outspoken, less. It's in the movies. In the Clone Wars, she sort of still has that fire, and I just wish that we had gotten more of that, because it seems like she sacrifices a lot for that relationship. If you just watch the movies, she like gives up everything for Anakin, and I hate that because that's not actually what happened. And I think Satine is very much the same way, except just a more extreme version where they were not going to give up their service to the greater good in the way that sort of presented for them. And I love that. I think that's a really mature, nuanced way to explore a relationship. And I'm glad that that's, what we get with them. I think it's more interesting. And I like the sort of complexity there that we get from their relationship.
So I'm saying Satine probably would have made a great Jedi. Just in the fact that she would have, just like Obi-Wan, she would have put she puts others in front of herself, and that's very much a Jedi-esque thing.
Trait.
And that's what Jedi are. But I thought it was just great how you guys said that they are very similar. Absolutely, they're more similar than anything. Um, and it does go to show, especially when Anakin does get more into Obi-Wan and figure out what that relationship means to, because he can definitely tell he's not dumb. He's a Jedi, like just like how Obi-Wan definitely knows that Padme and Anakin are doing their thing. He just avoids it because it's what makes Anakin happy, and he doesn't feel like he needs to put his 2 cents in. Which, I mean, hindsight 2020 probably should have, but well, that's another conversation for another day. But they get back into the elevator. He asks what's going, because it gets heated, very very heated between Obi-Wan and Satine, where they kind of say some things that they don't mean. And that's where you can kind of see the barriers that are being tried, like how deep this relationship is, because they know how to combat each other verbally. Anakin kind of makes a note of that. He's like, he sees that and he's like, gonna have to ask about this situation.
Has his martini glass and he's just like,
yeah, he's like sitting in the back saying, wow, it's not me for once.
Real Housewives of Mandalore, and he's like, I'm looking for
it. Real Housewives of Mandalore.
Yeah,
that is good. So Anakin asks after the whole exchange, because they get called. No, they don't get called. They leave. They go to the quarters. And Anakin goes, so what's the story? You gonna give me the deets? Because there's definitely something romantic between you two. And Obi-Wan gives him basically the runaround he gives him a smaller version of a story that we're all hoping to see. That him and Qui-Gon were sent to Mandalore to protect Satine from a similar situation. And that they were on the run, and that they
sent bounty hunters after us.
Yes.
Living hand to mouth, never knowing next day would bring.
Yeah.
Sounds romantic.
Yep, sounds romantic. Yeah. And it's just like Anakin's just like, I gotta have fun with this guy. I've been waiting years and years. But so then, and I love this because it does bring Anakin and Obi-Wan together in the sense of like they're able to talk about this, and it just makes it so heartbreaking to see this relationship, and then to see where it goes in episode 3, and just be like, you had a conversation earlier, like you couldn't just move that. It's so sad, so heartbreaking. But Obi-Wan gets a ping that there's something that R2's freaked out, because I think in between the conversations, the clones are attacked by the spider droids, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, and then that one is like has red eye, like a
yes,
puppet, and it's like very creepy.
Creepy. If you're not afraid of spiders, I'm not, but it's like it's really really weird. So they get called down below deck. Anakin goes, I got this. You go deal with Satine. Like, you got this.
You deal with your girlfriend.
Yeah. And
right, Anakin, she's not mine, and then he runs.
Yeah, and then he runs. So
Everyone knows the truth.
Anakin goes down and says, all right, what's the situation? I'm missing dinner. I'm like, God, that would have been fun to say as a Matt Lanter. That's like an Anakin saying right there. That's just the wit that he has. And Rex tells him that there are 2 men missing from the group. And she's like, well, all right, what's going on? And then he says that R2's like scared, and all right, he's like, all right, R2, calm down. Now let's kind of figure this out. Let's just use your scanners, bud. And it's just, when they start to find the spider droids, I'm like, okay, first we have the commando droids. And these spider droids, why don't they just manufacture the hell out of those and leave the B1s out of the whole thing? Because, I mean, let's think about it. An army of those and commando droids and B1s and droidicas. probably would have won the war. Just leave the B1s
But that
out
was
of them.
not the Separatists' aim.
It wasn't.
They were not
It wasn't
aiming to win.
Palpatine's
They
aim.
were aiming to
distract.
take as much time as Palpatine needed.
You're right. You're right. So they discover that the cargo crate that is mysteriously open. Anakin updates Obi-Wan, who's dining with Satine and numerous other senators. Then they come across the assassin probe, and they do a pretty good number on it. But the other one, so I think there's 3 in total, if I'm not mistaken, right? Correct? Or is it just the 2? Just 2?
I think there's 2. Yes.
Okay. I thought there were 3 at one point because I know they had destroyed one down. The other one went up. And I thought there was one more. It was the smaller ones that they were looking out for, the later ones. So Anakin alerts Obi-Wan that then one's coming up, and Obi-Wan gets everybody prepared. And like that scene, like again, Onfrey Tar, useless. Like what? Why aren't they teaching the senators how to defend themselves to make them more useful? Like Jar Jar. And Rex is like, I'm not teaching him how to shoot, which is kind of fair in that situation because Jar Jar with a blaster is really scary, if you ask me. Very irresponsible, but that's just me.
I mean, he didn't even know how to use a blaster, and he took out a droideka, 3 B1s on the Battle of Naboo.
That's just straight luck. Come on.
No, it's not luck. It's Jar Jar.
Yeah, it's Jar Jar.
Yeah, it's a difference.
So Obi-Wan's able to destroy the second probe, but both parties are then attacked by the smaller droids that pop out, which is ingenious because if you think from a strategy point, you see that we've destroyed the droid, that was pretty easy, and then they all start coming out in waves, and they're so small that you can't really shoot them with blasters. So then we get to see Obi-Wan and Satine back to back, kind of doing like the whole like he's slashing while she's shooting with like a taser type, and he's like, "Where did you have that? I thought you were a pacifist." She's like, "Doesn't mean I can't use something to defend myself." And I was like, "Good, more juiciness of like back and forth. I love it. Thank you." And so they take out the smaller ones, except for one. Anakin the clones also take out the other one, but they are still looking for the smaller ones as they're looking. Obi-Wan gets the idea to use the last one to figure out who let them on. Anakin finds that out through the log. Because he asked the droid like how it got on, and he said all things were allowed on here by the Senate stamp. And Anakin's like, so we have a turncoat. Yet again for like the 4th time throughout the entire series. In 2 seasons, we've got a guy that's working for the other side. Why can't we have a guy working on our side? On the other side. Come on.
Nice.
Oh wait, we do. Sorry. He's just playing both sides. So when Anakin tells Obi-Wan that, he gets the idea to use the probe, the smaller probe, to figure out who is behind it. He takes and scares the shit out of Onfrey Tar, which is awesome because it's like he says something along the lines of, "Oh, this meal is a little too big for the notorious." What was the line?
It's the infamous appetite of
Beth coming in clutch. I thought that was funny because it's like you look at Onfrey Tar and you're like, yeah, this guy eats a ton. So great call on Obi-Wan. He goes through the Onda Far, which is he the same senator that he with Padme in season 1, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I thought so. And then there's Ken Robb, who we don't see after this episode, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think she disappears.
Yeah, there's some that we don't ever see again. And then when he nears Tal Merrick, the droid stops attacking because it attacks everybody else. And Obi-Wan's like, well, it won't attack the person that it's not supposed to. And Tal pretty much is like, very, very good. Ha ha ha. Like, he beats Obi-Wan at his own game, and he takes Satine as a hostage.
Yeah.
And as a Jedi, I would be like, all right, that's it. I'm done messing around. Like, it's time to use the Force to stop this guy. But Obi-Wan refuses to do that. I'm like, you will take down multiple droids, but you won't stop a hostage situation, especially with the woman that you once professed your love for.
Right.
And I found that very compelling because he is still willing, like we were telling, he's very by the book still, even in a situation like that. What were your guys' thoughts on that whole situation?
I wonder, so here's my question. The way that Tal Merrick is holding the blaster to Satine, it might literally be, can he take the blaster from his hand before he pulls the trigger? It might literally be a timing situation where he doesn't know if he has enough time to do that, and it could be risky. There's a lot of situations where why don't they use the Force here? And I haven't really sort of thought about. Does he have the explodey thing right away? Does he bring that up right away?
He's got it in a back pocket. He uses it. So he takes Satine. They go to the bridge, and he assassinates everybody.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep, that is a bad guy.
Yeah.
Like, that is a guy that you don't want to mess with. Finally, we've got somebody that's kind of like Dooku in that sense, in Ventress. And he gets a hold of Vizsla, who sends boarding ships full of B2s. Oh, no, just B2s to help Merrick on the Cornet. And then Obi-Wan ends up catching up to the two. But as this is happening, Anakin and Rex are going to basically take out the droids and the Senate and Satine's Royal Guards, which, by the way, those guys are pretty badass. Those staff sticks are pretty formidable.
Yeah.
I think she needs a lot more of those guys because as we learn later down the line, if there would have been more of those guys, we would have been better off.
Yeah.
So Obi-Wan attempts to arrest Merrick. Merrick, however, has rigged the engines to explode to the detonator, and Satine begs Obi-Wan to stand his ground, and the Jedi follows at a distance as Satine is dragged toward one of the boarding ships. And this is the moment where Satine professes her love to Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's kind of caught in he knows. I feel like he knows he's known this for a while, but just hearing her say it takes him aback, and Obi-Wan admits that he would have left the Jedi Order for her. And Merrick goes, just like, the love, it's disgusting. And that's the moment where Satine is able to get the upper hand on Merrick. And she steps on his foot, grabs the gun, and does a nice little twirl and just points the blaster. And I love this. I love this interaction between these three, because Merrick calls into question whether who's going to take him out. Is it going to be the Jedi that has been able to do it without any problems, or is it going to be Satine who's too? She's a pacifist. Would she dare cross that line? And he said, I can't remember exactly the line, but he meant he goes to Satine first, then goes to Obi-Wan, and then says almost anyone, and then looks back at Satine.
Mm-hmm.
And
he literally
then
goes like he literally delivers the line where he's like, almost anyone. Like he does like a very old-fashioned
Saturday
villain. It's like he's literally twirling his mustache. I love the way he delivers literally every line. It's perfect. Like Cool brand themselves a cold-blooded killer, and you're just like, he is eating this up. He is having his moment. Also, Tal Merrick is apparently a prince, and I don't understand why or how. He's from Satine's homeworld of Kalevala. He is a prince. I help. There's just so much information about Mandalorian stuff where they're just like, Tal Merrick, who is a prince? And I'm like, of what? Of Kalevala? How does that work? Is it a principality?
Yeah, that's my question now. But Julia, you are literally saying exactly what's going in my head.
Yeah,
like how does that work? Are they a providence of? Are they like Concordia?
Yeah,
Are they
because
just like
the Satine's family is from there. Did they give up a particular title? Is it sort of like France, where they allow Monaco to have a prince and have a principality, but
like Dooku?
Yeah, exactly. So like lots of questions, and no answers because he is fortunately about to be run through with Anakin's lightsaber, but
which is hilarious because it's just like, who will brand themselves a cold-blooded killer, and then you just see the lightsaber.
I'll do it.
And Anakin just Anakin doesn't catch it, but Obi-Wan does, correct?
Mm-hmm.
If I remember, he catches it, and he goes, Anakin. he's like, what? He was gonna blow up the ship.
Yeah. Very pragmatic.
Like, come on. Like, what'd you want me to do? Just let him blow up the ship?
Totally.
And then also you hear the Vader theme in the background for a little bit. Yeah.
Which is kind of weird in a little bit of a sense, because it's like, yes, he did kill somebody.
I feel like the Vader thing always comes up whenever Anakin kills somebody.
Yeah. And it's just
it's it's a hint. He's gonna be getting to the dark side soon.
But like that, he didn't do it out of like a dark side manner. He did it I mean, not really honorably, since he stabbed him through the back, but like he did it to save people.
Right.
So it's like, I don't quite understand why that tone is thrown in there. I get it, but it just doesn't make sense, like, from the situation point.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
He's committing a war crime against the is it a Geonosian that they have in
Geonosians
that they have in captivity, and he just is torturing a prisoner. Like that makes sense to play the Vader, the Imperial March. But yeah, they really kind of go a little heavy-handed with the Vader theme with Anakin, where it's like,
are you talking about when Anakin was torturing Poggle the Lesser?
Yeah, Poggle in Geonosis arc. Yeah. That is definitely a Vader moment.
Yes,
this definitely
torturing
is
a prisoner. Vader moment, absolutely. This just kind of doing the right thing.
Yeah. So if you're you're saying that. No, go ahead, Beth.
I was just gonna say, actually, so I was like, how could this potentially be a Vader moment? But he kills someone out of attachment.
All right. Okay. Beth coming in with the actually. So
no, I just thought of it. I was like, oh
no, but that does make sense. That makes sense, because yes, he is attached to Obi-Wan. Absolutely. I guess that makes a little bit more sense now that it could be a Vader moment, because he does kill out of attachment.
Yeah.
In most situations, or does dark side things due to attachment. So I that could definitely be.
Yeah. Considering he was coming from behind, speaking to using the Force, disarming him at that point, like you're talking about useful prisoners to like get to the bottom of what's happening.
Or just cut off the hand. What stops us from cutting off hands?
Like he definitely took a more extreme approach that he didn't necessarily have to take there, if you really want to break it down, especially since Merrick has no idea that he's there. And he's just like, nope, saber through the heart immediately. I'm making sure that this guy can't ever do anything bad again. And so, I definitely, that's interesting to think about. And then immediately after that, Anakin's like, and I'm not seeing anything. He literally has like a turn away moment.
He's like, but he was gonna destroy the ship. Like I had to, which is.
And then I'm not.
There's a dead body here. Not gonna name names who killed him.
No.
Yeah, just
you guys maybe want to talk. I'm not here. Wink, and then like turns away.
So then the coronet finally arrives on Coruscant, where Palpatine congratulates the Jedi on their work. As always, Anakin, whenever they have Anakin Palpatine in the same room, Anakin always does his most to like be as cordial and as like appropriate as possible. And I think it's so funny that like that's the way that works. Satine approaches Obi-Wan, casually flirts with him, says that she doesn't like the beard because it covers up too much of his handsome face, I believe is the quote that is said.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
And then we see, I think that's
Anakin said, "What was that all about?"
Yes,
Then,
yeah. What was that all about? And Obi-Wan's just like, don't ask. Don't
I
ask.
did want to bring up one thing from this episode before we move on, which is when they're in their little room talking about his relationship.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things that get mentioned. One, he mentions a civil war killed half of her people. This is one of the only references we get to like the aftermath of the Civil War. If he's being literal, that is an insane sort of result that would have, I think, warranted the kind of extreme change that we see. That's something really interesting. But I specifically want to mention when Anakin's like, right, Master Yoda says not to form attachment. And Obi-Wan has a line that sort of really sticks with me, which he said, but he fails to leave out the undercurrent of remorse, which is a very... So Obi-Wan just like doesn't say any, like he doesn't reveal information, and then every once in a while he'll just like drop like a very insightful
subtle
bomb, and then you're just like, can we talk about that more? And he's like, no. And I just yeah, you know, like making the right decision doesn't mean that it was an easy decision to make, which I think is a very Obi-Wan thing to say. So I love that line.
Camilla, embrace the beard era. I mean,
yeah,
a lot beards are cool now, which is great because.
But if you look at the Mandalorians, they don't have any beards. None of them have beards.
It's just strange.
So it might be a cultural thing. They also seem to have a very high rate of male pattern baldness. So it might just be, although usually that means that they grow people like the testosterone. You can grow really great beards even if you don't have hair in your head. Anyway, it doesn't make sense. But the Mandalorian men have a very specific receding hairline, and
they just shave a bunch.
Yeah, maybe it's like from the helmets, and there's a long history.
Maybe
of,
the
like,
Beskar kind of like.
Yeah, although Din does have a little goatee, which I'm like, who is that for, Bestie? Who's that for?
Yeah.
For you
Who is
to know that it's there?
No, yeah. Brian, did someone say beard? Yes, Brian, you have one of the best beards out there. Okay.
Yeah.
You can put it away. Thank you. Voyage of Temptation, like I said, one of the best episodes, hands down, single episodes that I really, really enjoy. And now we get to the finale of the arc, Duchess of Mandalore. Char?
All right, here we go. All right, clear my throat. Okay. I'm kidding. Anyway, let's add okay. All right, Luke, if you don't mind counting down from 3.
Yep. 3, 2, 1.
A diplomatic mission. As dissent threatens to tear up the peaceful Mandalore system, Duchess Satine struggles to protect her people against the escalating violence. Betrayed by 2 of her trusted allies, Satine now travels to Coruscant. There, she hopes to convince the Senate that a destructive splinter group, Death Watch, does not represent the Mandalorian or the entire Mandalorian government.
Nice. So we start off, we see Dooku doing this, as always, just like Palpatine. I feel like Palpatine was like, okay, so if you're going to be my apprentice, you got to learn how to do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what? And it's this.
Sit on a chair and do this for about half an hour.
Right here. It works well with the Force lightning. It just gets the fingertips going.
It's like
so
a warm up.
Yeah. So this is where you really start to see Dooku
Finger
and
exercises.
Yeah, So you see Dooku and Vizsla's disconnect here because Dooku is warning Vizsla, pull out, because there's nothing we can do right now. The Republic is not taking the bait. We've got something else planned. Sit tight. And Pre Vizsla wants nothing of it. I'm gonna go in guns a blazing whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And Dooku is just like, just listen to me, and we just send an assassin. We'll take out Satine, and we'll let the plan move on. So on the back end of the Death Watch camp, we see a scout of Satine's one of Satine's guards, I believe, or he's a scout that Almac calls. And he gets back and he lets Almac know that there's a situation that they are moving. Oh, he's a new Mandalorian new Mandalorian. Okay, so it's Death Watch versus the new Mandalorians now. I've got that now. I wasn't really all that aware to it. Sorry. I probably should have gotten that down in the first episode. But here we are. So the guy claims that Death Watch will never have the strength required to conquer Mandalore without the people's support, which is true.
It's true.
It's very, very true, because you see that even throughout the entire Clone Wars when it comes back to Mandalore. It's who the people support.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole plan goes to, because and everybody else knows that across the galaxy. You can't overthrow Mandalore without the true people of Mandalore.
Yeah. It's almost like they're never going to be ruled by an outside force, and that if that outside force were to realize that they were never going to have complete control, they might feel compelled to just get rid of them, like in some sort of purge. Potentially could
foreshadowing.
Yeah, it's almost like, it's a foreshadowing. I guess it's like backshadowing. I just created a new concept called backshadowing, which I know is just retconning, but I think maybe it'll be a more positive way of describing this. But watching these episodes of the Clone Wars and then later watching the Mandalorian episodes of Rebels made me violent, because I saw the Mandalorian before I saw Rebels, and so I only saw the outcome of what was happening there. And so now when I go back and watch Clone Wars, I'm like, just take the Darksaber and like throw it into space. Just get rid of it. Let it go. Just someone please destroy it. Throw it into back into Mount Doom. Like, this is nothing good is gonna come from this. And it's so sad. It's a bit of a tangent, but I just find the tragedy of what happens to Mandalore is rooted in these episodes, and it's really, really sad. And I think
it is.
When Mandalorian season 3, if we get more detail about the purge, I'm thinking even now that Sabine's been confirmed to be in Ahsoka, she's a survivor now of that.
Yes.
And what happened to the Runs? What happened to Cronus? These other sort of Cronus, Kalevala, Concordia, Concord Dawn, did they suffer the same fate as Mandalore proper? Just a lot of questions that I have, but it's all back to this, like you're saying, like it's all foreshadowing of.
It is very, very much foreshadowing, because we don't see a whole lot of what happens to the we don't really know what happens to Mandalore after the Empire. It's hinted at in Rebels, and it's kind of flushed out in Rebels, but after that, the only other thing is we get the Mandalorian. That's pretty much all we know.
We see this triumphant. You can't imagine how violent it made me to watch The Mandalorian season 2 and then go back and watch Rebels and see Sabine give Bo-Katan the Darksaber, and I just was like yelling. I think there's still a video of me on TikTok responding to this, being like, no, absolutely not. Like, something happened here between these two time periods that went terribly, terribly wrong. And like, I know I'm supposed to be happy, but all I feel is pain. And it's Sabine, yes, like, Sabine, throw it into the fire. And then she's like, no. Just like has her Isildur moment of like refusing. Yeah, you know what? The Darksaber is now the One Ring. I don't make the rules. It is, I think, inherently a corruptive force. I don't think you can wield it You think you're going to wield it for good?
But
No,
what about
you can't.
Din?
I think it would corrupt him. I don't think. You know what I would love? I actually would. This would be very radical, but I think they should destroy the Darksaber at the end of the Mandalorian. I think they should destroy it and
Beth,
start over.
thoughts?
Thoughts about the Darksaber in general, or thoughts about it being destroyed?
Thoughts on it being destroyed, because I mean, it's like that's kind of that is very radical, and it would basically that is what should have happened in the beginning. To be honest,
I would like it, but I feel like it would have to be a member of House Vizsla that would destroy it. So that way it would be like symbolic as far as coming full circle.
Is there any Vizslas left?
Is Paz Vizsla still alive?
Paz Vizsla is, and it's also House Vizsla, so you would have Sabine technically because she's she's part of Clan Red.
Okay.
And so then I guess so I mean Sabine could easily
now I need Sabine to destroy the Darksaber, and if I don't get it, I'm gonna be mad. I just think it represents the way that they're setting up the fact that people are fighting and dying over the stupid sword, and like the way that Bo's obsessed with this sword as representative of like how to fix Mandalore, and it's like clearly for the past 30-40 years, Bo, this hasn't worked. Like you haven't successfully wielded this sword in order to unite Mandalore. This has turned into a Darksaber rant, and I'm sorry, but I just think it would be very fitting for Din and Sabine to be like, you know what? We need to start over. Like the Mandalore of the past, we can honor the past, but like this sword represents pain and suffering, and we need to destroy it. And then they destroy it, and Din becomes the new Mandalore, but like doesn't wield this like symbol of destruction. That's what I think. Anyway, that's my rant about the Darksaber.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and then later they can like reforge it, right? Like it's a fun storyline.
This is what they could do. This is what they could do. They could just take the crystal out, just keep the blade on the ground, have Bo-Katan use Moff Gideon's ship to blast it, and then easy right there.
Wait, hold on though. What if the hilt is made of Beskar?
It is made of Beskar, isn't it?
Not canonically confirmed, but it's statistically most likely made out of Beskar or a Mandalorian alloy. Yeah. But it hasn't been confirmed.
So how are we gonna destroy it with a ship, though? You can't.
Well,
what's gonna be our Mount Doom?
Or just be like Kylo Ren and just throw it in the ocean.
It could be liquid. It could be magma Beskar. They could be at a mining facility. Magma Beskar.
Okay.
Drop it in Mount Doom.
All right. Literally.
Mando season 3. We are giving you the plot.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Mando,
it's happening here.
Din Djarin's gonna go to Mount Doom.
He's gonna go to Mount Doom,
and then it's just gonna
drop it. And then all of a sudden, Smeagol's gonna come out.
And then all of
a
sudden, there's gonna be just giant holes in the ground, and
we don't make the rules, people. Just like Julia said, we don't make the rules.
Bo-Katan is Smeagol in this, and I'm sorry, but he is.
And then eagles just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So back to the episode. After seeing the group and the back and forth between Vizsla and the Scout, we see the Galactic Senate in session, which we don't see a ton, but we do see more in the show, which is nice because we are still we're Star Wars, and wars are started by mostly politics.
Mm-hmm.
And to see that Palpatine, Papa Palps, obviously weaving his web and crinkling his fingers and getting the Force lightning ready, basically shows that that there is an addressing rising concern about the Death Watch, and Satine cuts in and intervenes, saying that Mandalore is putting great effort into finding the leaders of the group, who are unable to gain control of the planet because they don't have the will of the people. Then Palpatine's basically like, that's not what this recording says. And the recording, Deputy Minister Jarek, basically...
He's also from Kalevala, just a fun fact.
Oh! maybe they're related to Satine and Merrick.
Because the only things we know about Kalevala, Satine is from there, Merrick is a prince from there, and then Jarek gets killed, like he dies there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So Jarek states that there's a civil war that is amiss in with the Mandalorians. Satine's obviously taken back by this because she's like, I know this guy. He wouldn't be saying this stuff. And Padme, see, this is the best part, is that we've got Anakin and Obi-Wan in the last episode. Now we got Satine and Padme growing a friendship and growing kind of like the similar thing. I feel like Anakin, after he left Obi-Wan and like when Padme left Satine, they're like, wow, they got issues as much as we got issues. And so Padme asks Satine and asks her who this person is, and Satine says, yeah, I know this person. And when the recording stops, Satine adamantly states that's not, this isn't the case. And Papa Palps is basically like, well, we ran out of time. We will talk about this next session. We will vote on this next session, and adjourned. And Satine's like, what? Like, what's going on? And as she walks out of the building, Obi-Wan approaches, and she is heated. Just heated. And Obi-Wan's like, yo, we're on the same team. Why are you taking your anger out on me? Like, what's going on? Char, what are your thoughts on Satine going off on Obi-Wan in that moment?
It's like a typical boyfriend-girlfriend kind of situation.
True that, my friend. True that. Happens quite often.
You got to have someone to vent to.
Yeah. Absolutely. A lending ear is always good to have. And Obi-Wan's just more like, okay, I hear you, but I'm trying to help. No, but okay, I'm hearing you again. Can I help you? No. Can I help? No. All right. Well, I guess I'll just listen then.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys also.
Obi-Wan is the kind of guy who, like, sometimes you just want to vent. You don't want your problems to be solved, and there are a lot of men who take you explaining your problems as like, okay, I'm going to solve the problem. And like, sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you just want to like express frustration. And Obi-Wan seems very much like a problem solver in terms of like, okay, well, how are we going to fix it? And we'll fix it. And I think Satine here,
he's like, well, then let's try this, Satine.
Yeah, and she's like, no, I'm expressing frustration with the democratic process and like a bloated bureaucracy. I don't think we can fix that right now. I'm just upset about that. And it's you see that sort of conflict of like, yeah, sometimes you just want to be frustrated and like, or you don't want the problem fixed. And like Satine has a lot of moments where she's a very sort of intense emotional person, and it gets misread as like a lack of seriousness. And I think it's important, like how extreme, like she is fearing the type of invasion that ends up destroying her planet. So I think it's sort of like that Cassandra prophetic moment where she can see the dangerous path that's leading to, and no one else seems to be able to see it. And as a result, she looks a little crazy for being like, no, they're trying to like take control of Mandalore, which is exactly what they're trying to do. But the galaxy's Overton window is not yet open to conversations about like the Republic's sort of overreach or whatever. So it's a good insight to their relationship, but it's also a great insight into the fact that I think Palpatine needs her out of the way because she's aware of sort of the dynamics of the way the Republic itself is flawed, not just the Separatists.
Yes.
And like she can't be allowed to like survive to see those machinations. So yeah.
Absolutely.
He really can't handle women in power. I think that's like true. That's truly Palpatine's downfall.
Yep, he can't handle Padme. He can't handle Satine. He can't handle Mon Mothma or Mother Townsend. Any woman that has a voice is very much a threat to him. It seems like.
Well, and Leia takes much the same role later.
Oh yeah,
too,
and
where
Leia.
like
The Geonosian Queen.
yes,
Oh yeah, her
exactly.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like, look, I don't want to read too deep into it. Does Palpatine come from a planet with a strong matriarchy? Yes.
Mhm.
Does he give off some vibes? Perhaps.
A little bit.
Like, I'm not saying Palpatine is an incel. I'm saying we don't know that he's not.
He just puts off the vibes. That's all we're saying. We're just saying.
Palpatine is a pick-me boy.
He's a frat boy for sure.
Yeah. Look at the history of like Bray Organa is the queen of Alderaan. What planet gets destroyed? Alderaan. Naboo. He basically like ruins his own planet. Mandalore is ruled by a woman. I'm not saying that Palpatine has more problems than we think, but we should look into it.
Yeah, they need to do a little bit more digging. If they would have, they might have cut on to the whole issue.
Yeah. Someone said no to the Naboo prom, and he's like, "Fine, I'll become a Sith Lord."
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So after the little him listening and her venting and her speeder gets sabotaged, and the guy tells the guards to jump out of. I mean, he calculates this. Let me just tell you, calculates it down to the smallest. Like, if I don't have this speed, you're not gonna make it. So you gotta jump now. And I'm just thinking to myself, this guy's just not an ordinary pilot. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And the way that he jumps out, they jump out and they land perfectly. Like, I feel like they both had her. One was on top, one was on bottom, and it just worked perfectly. Those guards, I tell you what, those guards are great.
Well, they're what become the Protectors. They're the Mandalorian Protectors. So when you see Ben Rao and his squad later, like, they have a history of protecting the crown, and I'm sure have run many drills, had practiced many times, and like they're very well trained. So it's a fun little connection where you see that training. What sort of group of Mandalorians has martial training that aren't extremists? And it's literally the Protectors, because we don't have true Mandalorians in canon. So it's just the Royal Guard, and that's what becomes the Protectors of Concord Dawn. So yeah.
So then we get a shot. Obviously we see the speeder run into the building, which is going to cost people a lot of money. Those construction people, that building's going to have a little bit of issues on that level. We get Palpatine's office. Satine tries to convince Palpatine that the malfunction was not an accident, that her speeder was tempered with. He dismisses the whole thing because why would they? And then Mas Amedda puts his big old fat head into it, and he agrees with Satine, but only further justifies the needs that they need to handle the Death Watch more seriously, and that they think that she's not handling it well. And it, just like you said, Julia, they're trying to solve the problem instead of just listening. Also, because one of the people is the problem.
Yeah.
And it's never going to get fixed because he is the problem. So she expressed the disgust with the political structure, with Obi-Wan again. He basically is just like, now this is just not good. Like, you're being basically hunted down, and this is just, we can't have this. And she basically is just like, the Chancellor and Mas Amedda are just the worst. She does say that to Obi-Wan that she is all right. She's just frustrated, which happens. In the middle of the conversation, Padme informs them that the Senate has voted to basically, they were in an emergency session, and that they are planning on invading Mandalore, which that's the straw that broke the camel's back in that situation. And then they're planning to leave at sunrise. Now, this next part, where she gets this contact, is a very interesting plot hole. I mean, does the guy come from Mandalore specifically? Does he come from Kandahvala? I just don't understand how she got in contact with this person. And that was the one thing that went through my mind, is that she finds this guy. He's a fellow Mandalorian, and he's the in-between for the Republic Ministry of Intelligence. He's a Mandalorian that works for them. And he hands her the card of the actual message that Jarek sent and says that it was tampered with. Well, there's a Death Watch assassin who's basically... I don't understand why he didn't just take out Satine. Why he shot the informant. Like, you got her in your sights. You might as well just take her out. But
that reminds me of the Cosmonaut Variety Hour bit where he's like, Palpatine sends a guy who sends a guy who sends a shapeshifter who sends a robot who sends slugs to kill Padme.
Yeah.
Just like, why? What is the logic here?
Yeah. So obviously he misses, and then so Satine's there, and the security droids are like, stop her, she killed that person. And she's like pleading with them, I did not kill him. Kind of like there's another situation later down the line where the police droids don't do their job again.
Yeah.
And it's just like hand to face sometimes with these droids in the Republic in general. And like she ends up going on this wild goose chase, and the assassin fails to kill her the first attempt. Thoughts on that whole exchange? Anybody? Char? Beth?
You guys can go ahead.
My favorite part, and I want to know why, when Obi-Wan finds her, he's like, nice disguise, and smiles like he's seen it before. That's the story I want. How did he know? Yeah. I mean, obviously he could sense her through the Force, but I was like, there's a story there, and I want that.
And it's got to be in the year.
Look, the red cloak, it's a good look. It's a nice look.
It is very good look.
Yeah.
It's a great cloak. I think Obi-Wan is just he's a fine connoisseur of cloaks, and I think he was like, nice cloak. I appreciate that. It's a nice touch.
He's like, I want that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's my red cloak?
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, Julia.
Oh, I was just gonna say, this episode is a little bit frustrating because it is episodes. So the Mandalore plot and Voyage of Temptation fit pretty well together. The relationship between Obi-Wan and Satine in this episode is it doesn't make a lot of sense emotionally from what we saw in Voyage of Temptation. I feel like they have this like shift in, they have to like take it down a notch from the sort of tension that we got, and that makes sense. I just think it would have been nice to have a conversation where they debrief on the confessions of love that they just had, and then suddenly we have this next episode where it's like they're just kind of friends again, and it's a really it's an abrupt transition. And I think it has always bothered me that there isn't some sense of like that in this episode they don't have a conversation where it's like we've been acting really weird, like can we talk about the fact that you like having a little moment where they talk about what happened in Voyage of Temptation, and it never comes up, and it drives me crazy. And so I always have frustration with this episode because I think this episode would have been better if they were still dealing with the sort of heightened emotional stakes of Voyage of Temptation, because here you just like a essentially platonic relationship, and it's missing the tension that was just present in the last episode. And it always has bothered me that I don't know, Beth, if you feel the same way, but that's kind of a pet peeve I have with this episode as a whole.
I completely agree. It feels like the chemistry is definitely muted, and then the whole like, hey, we're friends, right? She's like friends, but kind of sad. It feels totally different. But I have my own headcanons for why the tension's gone. So,
Whoa. Why is that?
That's not anything I can say on here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But
all right.
But there is a missing scene.
I got what you're dropping.
There's a missing scene.
I got what you're dropping. I caught what you're. I'm picking up what you're dropping.
I know X-Core was here earlier saying like they can't, it's not kid friendly. What the missing piece that you need between these two episodes, and like I agree, like either it's a very adult conversation about like wanting different things, or it's a different type of adult situation that you can't show on the Clone Wars. And so as a result, they've like built up. That happens. It happens less and less as the Clone Wars develops, where they just sort of the show grows with the age of its audience, which I think is really sort of smart. But this is season 2, and like they're trying to tackle a lot of things that are just, you can't get into it in the depth you need to for children. This is fine, but it's
absolutely
for adult audience. Like, we're not the target audience. We're like, but wait, what happened between I would have left the Jedi Order for you and I love you, and now we're just like,
so you're my friend again?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cool. Friend zoned again.
Yeah.
But like in between that, the assassin reaches out to Vizsla. And in between that, Dooku's talking to Papa Palps. And he's basically, Palps is like, the Death Watch is ready to fight the Republic forces. Palps is like, he expresses concern about the possible interference by Duchess Satine. And Dooku's like, she won't be an issue. And it's like, Dooku severely over or underestimates like every opponent.
Yeah.
And like sometimes it's right to underestimate, but like most of the time that's his downfall, because he underestimates them.
He does that to Ventress.
Yes.
He does the same thing. He has a huge ego, and it gets in the way. And absolutely.
So, like we were saying earlier, Obi-Wan and Satine meet up. So they meet up. She hands Obi-Wan the card because they're not going to stop a Jedi from going into the Senate building, which is completely true. They're not. They leave together, but are followed by the assassin. In an alleyway, the assassin tosses the thermal detonator at them, but Obi-Wan's like, force push. Oh, I almost just knocked over something. Force push. And just like, so you could use the force there. But you do we just pick and choose when we use the force? Like, come on. And he pretty much saves Satine's life for like the umpteenth time. That case on Kato Nemoidia doesn't count, kind of. That's as many times as he saved her. And the Death Watch assassin's pretty formidable. I tell you what, because Obi-Wan has a tough time taking out the guy. But the best part is when I think he malfunctions the jetpack and he hits a wall and then goes straight down. I was like, good job, Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Good job. Great job. So he ends up taking out the assassin. They get to the Senate building. Satine approaches the Senate commandos, basically turning herself in so that Obi-Wan can get to Padme to give the information. So Palpatine, they get that information. They get the message in. Palpatine obviously has like a, well, fuck, they figured it out. Face, and they play the full recording, and it's opposite. It's Jarek saying, we don't need interference from the Republic. We can take care of this ourselves, and which saves them for a time, but not forever.
It just prolongs the inevitable. It's
It
fine.
does, very much so. At the Death Watch base, sirens are blaring. Obviously, Vizsla's furious again, and Dooku basically is just like, we can't do anything. I'll get back to you, bro, when there's a better time, basically.
Mhm.
And Vizsla, this is what Vizsla's distaste for Dooku and the Sith now shows up in the later seasons. But he
Mhm.
mentions it multiple times throughout the entire series. Then we get a shot back at Palpatine's office. Palpatine thanks Padme for the new information, eliminates the current need for Mandalore's occupation. She gives all the credit to Satine, who enters at that exact moment, which is nice because then you get to see that in between Padme and Satine, the friendship grow, and see what it could have been later down the line. Then ends with the Jedi. Basically, she talks to Obi-Wan again for a short time, and then basically the episode ends. As she says to Obi-Wan, things are changing, and kind of hints on what's supposed to come. With that being said, it's time for our rankings. So, do I need to go over the rankings again for everybody in the chat and for here? Yes.
I mean, if you want to, I can go over them real quick.
Sure, go.
All right. So as an arc, your rankings will be Jedi Youngling is bad, Jedi Padawan, okay, Knight good, Master great, Grandmaster chef's kiss. There you go.
Buster, they want to see you. You gotta be good.
Buster.
Gotta be good.
Oh, hi, little guy.
You're
Too
so-
bad Chewie's not here.
Yeah,
You would
you're
love
Where is he?
so
Chewbacca.
dark in here. They can't see your face.
Oh
Where's
yeah,
Chewie?
Buster. At my parents' house.
Oh, Chewie.
I
no.
know. Sorry. But he'll be back next week on. No, I'm just kidding. So, Julia, what's your ranking of the arc?
I think the second best one would be my
Jedi
Master.
Yeah. I think as a whole, like had the third episode been as good as the first two episodes, I would be up there in terms of like I think as an arc, it's solid. Again, there's just some emotional disconnect in the last piece of it that kind of falls apart, as opposed to like the Lawless arc in season 5, which is I would put in the highest rank in terms of like consistent emotional storytelling throughout. Voyage of Temptation, I would put in the highest rank in terms of individual episodes, though. It's self-contained. You don't need to sort of see the other parts of it to understand it, and it has a very solid sort of narrative and emotional sort of connection. But I would say second highest for the arc as a whole, which is why I get upset when people say you can skip the first 2 seasons of Clone Wars. I'm like, you absolutely cannot skip the first 2 seasons of Clone Wars.
Geonosis arc and this one make
and this
the
one
entire
in particular
season.
is so necessary to the rest of the series, and also
absolutely.
It's one of Obi-Wan doesn't have that many standalone arcs in the Clone Wars. I'm currently working on a Clone Wars episode guide for Obi-Wan in preparation for the series coming out, and it's actually surprising how little focus he has in the show as a whole in terms of stories that are about him, and even the stories that are about him aren't really about him.
No, they aren't.
So that's something I'm working on, but yeah,
awesome.
That's my ranking.
Beth?
Nice. I completely agree with Julia. I would say the Jedi Master, as far as the overall arc, specifically again because of the third one. Whenever I watch the arc, I'll always watch the first 2, and then I'm just like, okay, let's move on to watch the
yeah.
Which I feel horrible about. So that's the only reason why. And obviously, Voyage of Temptation, Chef's Kiss, incredible.
Oh God, yeah, I love that episode.
And also for people who say you can skip over the first 2 clones, this arc is literally in the like Disney Essential Clone Wars episodes like on Disney Plus. It's like Dark is part of it. You can't skip it. So
No, yeah, it's so detrimental to the entire series as a whole.
Just watch it in chronological order. Don't worry about seasons. Just watch it in chronological order. That's what I say.
I feel like sometimes you can watch it. You can just throw on an episode, and if somebody hasn't seen it, and just be like, "Oh, we're gonna watch like the Mandalore plot arc, see how they feel," and then they can go back and watch it.
Exactly.
However it was released or whatever. So Char, I think we're all going to be in agreement.
I think we
here.
all agree that it's a Jedi Master.
Jedi Master.
It's a very good
Jedi
arc.
Master. Absolutely.
And then the main reason why we say it's a Master is because there's one out of the 3 episodes that kind of drag it down. So
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with saying that it's a Jedi Master.
Everybody else in the chat, anybody else? I've got Robert Kenobi who says it's a Jedi Master. I absolutely would have made it a Grand Master if it weren't for that last episode for sure. But Char,
is it time for my segment?
Yes, it is.
It is. Yeah. All right. So you know the drill. Oh yeah, X-Core also said it's a Jedi Master.
Jedi Master as well. Yes.
All right. So are you ready?
Yes.
All right.
Doing in the voice.
I know. Ready?
Yep.
3 interesting facts about a certain Clone Wars arc that you didn't know about until now. Part 2, the Mandalore arc. Fact 1, Satine and her royal guards. Duchess Satine Kryze and her royal guards were inspired by unused concept art for Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Satine was based on some of Queen Amidala's illustrations, and her royal guards were inspired by Sith designs. Fact 2, Pre Vizsla's hologram. In Voyage of Temptation, the scene with Pre Vizsla's hologram appears in front of Tal Merrick and Satine. Pre Vizsla's character design wasn't finalized yet, so when he appears, he is shown with his Mandalorian helmet while wearing clone trooper armor. Fact 3, Ralph McQuarrie's work appears in this arc. In the Duchess of Mandalore episode, the Coruscant Park was based on several pieces of Ralph McQuarrie's concept art. The boulder in the middle is meant to be the only exposed mountain peak on Coruscant's surface.
I did know that one.
You did? Oh, okay.
I did know that one because it is talked about in the behind the scenes episode. Yeah, that too.
And I have a couple extra ones too, but those are the main 3. But Greg Proops, he's the voice of Fode and Fode and Bede, those announcers for the Boon to Eve Classic, the pod race. He voices Tal Merrick.
That makes sense.
Nice.
Followed closely by Skywalker. Yeah, he's voice acted by Tal Merrick. And the cool thing is also Jarek. The first thing he says in the Senate meeting is it's a period of civil war, which is the first line in A New Hope's opening crawl.
Again, absolutely. It's where we're headed.
No,
like poetry, it rhymes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. All right. So we're gonna get into Star Wars news for a little bit, but let's get into the news. All right. So
let's get down to business.
Since we are talking about the Boy Wonders, the dynamic duo, so Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh look, that's Ewan and Hayden.
Has talked about how the Obi-Wan Kenobi reunion has been in an emotional one, particularly for both Ewan and Hayden. She is quoted as saying they hadn't seen one another in a long time. I was surprised at just how incredibly emotional it was for each of them to find themselves back in these roles. And just realizing how important Star Wars was to each of them. It was the beginning of their careers, which is true. Yeah. Absolutely true of what she said there. So we talked a little bit about the sizzle reel in that community episode. But I want Beth and Julia's takes on what we could possibly see that is going to rip out our hearts. And Lucasfilm's going to take our hearts. They're just going to crush them. Like, what are we going to see in this show that is just going to crush us. Because you know they got something. What's that going to be?
Yeah, you guys can go ahead. I have a lot of thoughts on that question, and I just have to figure out which one that I would like to address first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um,
Either one.
So the first thing I'd like to say is that Ewan and Hayden have been, ever since the prequels were made, they worked together for 4 to 5 years, working on Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and we have like when you were a little kid watching them perform, you were like, oh my god, that was like that was Star Wars for you. Like I was born in 2000, so growing up, those were the two actors that really stood out to me because the first movies I watched were episodes 2 and 3. And seeing Ewan and Hayden having an emotional reunion when making the Kenobi show, it was kind of a given because they meant so much to us. And I'm sure them together were like the book that's coming out. They were brothers.
Oh god.
On screen and off screen. So it's cool to have them together again.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I went into a lot of my thoughts again on Conspiracy Cantina, the whole Obi-Wan episode. So I feel like here it's hard to, is she speaking about what they were doing? Is she just speaking about in general getting them together again? Like, I don't doubt we're going to see an emotional sort of connection here. Like I mentioned many times, I think we're going to see Obi-Wan training to become a Force ghost, and in doing that, he's going to have to face his past, like Yoda does in season 6 of the Clone Wars, and that will include facing Anakin and what happened to him. So I think it's going to be feeling like he failed him. This is very slight, tiny tangent. I watched the first episode of The Mandalorian with my mom, who doesn't know a lot about Star Wars, and so she then asked me to explain all of Star Wars to her.
Ooh, that's tough.
And so I was explaining who Anakin was and who Obi-Wan was, and she goes, "Well, is Obi-Wan a good guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's a very good guy." And she goes, "Then why did he let Anakin turn into Darth Vader?" And I was just like, "Mom, like,
hard-hitting question."
I was like, ouch, like they're really cut deep, Mom. And so I think, but that's got me thinking about, like, I'm sure once he realizes who Darth Vader is, if he hasn't already, that's going to be tough. So I imagine it's going to be a lot of like feeling like he's failed, and then also getting to the point where we see in A New Hope where he doesn't feel responsible and he just sort of knows at this point it's off to the next generation, to Luke and Leia to do what he couldn't do, and him coming to acceptance of, like, he has regrets, but he's no longer like taking responsibility for Darth Vader, which I think is important because it's not his fault at the end of the day.
Yeah. Which has been a big topic lately, talking about Anakin's fault of the dark side.
Yeah.
We're not gonna, not a slippery slope. Beth, your thoughts?
Oh man, so I have a ton of thoughts that I don't think I've really talked about them yet. However, my one thing that like sticks out in my mind is why, or at least this is me theorizing, why the show is called Obi-Wan Kenobi and not Kenobi, because everyone refers to it as Kenobi or the Kenobi series. But I think a lot of it is going to be, or a significant portion. There's a quote in the Kenobi book, which I have somewhere near me, but it's him talking to Qui-Gon in one of the meditations, and he's like, how am I supposed to, how can I become Ben if Obi-Wan is still alive?
That's one of my favorite Legends book.
Oh, it's such a good book. There's so many great angsty quotes.
JJM just knows how to write good Star Wars, even if it's Legends or canon.
We need to be brought into canon that Ben is from Satine, because that just connects the whole universe together. It's a really minor thing, but I need that very badly.
Yeah. Like, and I've said this every single time this conversation gets brought up. I like what you said, Julia, about him facing Anakin in that issue. I think he's going to face that physically as well.
Yeah.
My thing is like Vader and Anakin are my favorite character. I'm not an Anakin stan. Let me just say he had a lot of flaws. Hey, hold on. He had a lot of flaws. I'm not saying that he didn't have any part in his downfall. He definitely did. Anakin stans sometimes get a bad rap because there are extremists. But anyway, the moment I want to see is when Vader sees Obi-Wan. He takes a moment to take off the mask. Either takes off the mask, or it happens in battle where the mask comes off. And
But how would that work?
Just let me. Just I'm playing this out.
Because
This
it's
is
called
a long game.
suffocation.
No, because he uses the Force. Because remember that in Lords of the Sith, he can use the Force to literally help him breathe.
Oh, you know.
So
my thoughts on that book.
he can
Come on.
use that rage and that hate to take off the helmet, and you can see Hayden's face, his burnt face, his lost face, and he will say, "Look what you've done to me," with the yellow eyes and just the raw, because that's what Hayden did well in the last half of Revenge of the Sith, was his anger. He was able to channel that. And I feel like if that happens, I'm done. I'm going to be, when we do the reaction,
You're gonna be curled up in a ball, rocking back and forth in the corner of your room.
If Pablo Hidalgo wants to make fun of somebody for the reactions, that's not Star Wars Theory, call me or watch my reaction, because I will be in tears. I will literally bawl crying. And like, that's what I'm hoping will happen. I think we're definitely seeing them in a fight. That's happening. You can take it to the bank, whether you like it or not. I think it's very much going to be played into that part, because Obi-Wan, like I said, the Kenobi show is very necessary because it answers a lot of questions. Return of the Jedi. Vader says Obi-Wan once thought as you do. That doesn't make sense after Revenge of the Sith. He never thought that Vader was redeemable.
I mean, they kind of talk about that when they were walking in circles in Mustafar.
Yeah, but like,
I don't fear the dark side as you do.
But like the gravitas of like once Obi-Wan takes out Anakin on Mustafar, he's done. He doesn't believe that he's still there. Like he believes that his friend is gone. And like, and there's other things. It just works. That's what I think. But I went on a tangent. See, Julia, you're not the only one that goes on tangents. I go on tangents.
Yeah,
the show is full of tangents.
To talk as much as you want.
And then the last thing that we've got for news is that Kathleen Kennedy also said that the sequels, that there's room, that the door is always open for the sequel characters, and don't be surprised if they show up sooner rather than later. Now, this brings up the case of what characters do we want to see?
Well, I mean,
get
I've
their
been
own
hearing
shows
that,
and stuff like that.
I heard a week or two ago that Kathleen Kennedy went to get breakfast with Daisy Ridley not too long ago. So that could mean anything.
I love that the sequels are getting the sequel characters, because there's a ton that they could do. They could have Daisy and John do the building of or whether they're learning, she's teaching him of the ways of the Force, or teaching others with him the ways of the Force, building back the Jedi Order, if they even build back the Jedi Order. Like, those are questions that I feel like that need to be answered, and they will be. It's just the interesting thing is that this makes content for us that actually like the sequels. So like, we're gonna get these. I guarantee you we get announcements at Star Wars Celebration, hands down. We will probably get a in development Rey show and an in development Finn show as well. But I want your guys' thoughts on that. The sequels, the possibility of us getting more sequel content.
Hey, if you like the sequels, and if you don't like the sequels, you should just enjoy this. Because at the end of the day, it's Star Wars content. If you don't like Rey, if you don't like Poe, you don't like Finn, you don't like any of those characters, it's fine. You can have an opinion. But what they do with these characters may help your interest into liking the trilogy even more.
Yeah.
Just like Clone Wars, just like all the other side productions that they've been doing to help the current trilogy. So, like, not a lot of people have seen Resistance, but I think that's just because of the current stage that we're in. But I think that using some of the characters from the sequel trilogy to propel the outcome of the sequel trilogy and how the fandom is, it'll help.
Yeah.
And to see some development with Finn, that's the main thing I want to see. I want to see Finn's character arc revived, essentially. Because it kind of just took a huge detour in Rise of Skywalker. And I was like, this guy had so much potential.
Yeah.
He had the most potential out of any of the sequel characters.
Yep.
And just went down the drain. So if anything, I want Finn to have a main story if they're going to do that.
I agree. Beth?
I think it's going to be, in all honesty, I think the sequels are going to be in like 20, wait, how old? Yeah, God, I'm old. Okay, so like 20-ish years when this generation that's grown up with the sequels is now of our age. I think they're going to have that same level of nostalgia that we have for the prequels and why we love them so much, and they'll have that for the sequels. And I think that Disney is definitely going to utilize every single, aspect they can in order to continue to like push that forward. I would love like Jedi Finn story, like with Rey training him, like kind of how they did in the Lego special.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want that so badly.
Finn's lightsaber. I think Finn's gonna have a. I'm gonna say green.
Okay, I was also thinking green. That
boom. Let's go. We are all on the same wavelength. I love this.
The lightsaber over here.
Luke and Ezra, like I would put him in that category.
Yes.
And so that's what I think of.
And most of the time when they use a blue lightsaber, they usually just go to green. Just like how Luke did, just like how how Anakin did at the end of Attack of the Clones. I don't know, but I feel like it's kind of like a thing where you go from green to blue or vice versa.
Yeah.
But Beth, you were I kind of cut you off with the whole lightsaber thing.
Oh no, that was pretty much it. I think just my main thoughts right now are I would love the Jedi Finn stuff, and then obviously I think there was so much more that they could do with Ben Solo's character. Just because it is such a unique character, and again, we didn't get to see a whole lot of his childhood, and again, after, as far as like potentially there's like a world between worlds connection. So I would love to see them go in like those two directions. But I memean, who knows? It's all Star Wars is good Star Wars. Yeah. So it's like the more content that's out there, the better.
Yeah. Julia?
I think, when they announced a lot of the new books, including the one that's Luke and Lando and OG of Best June, for example, there were a lot of people that ended up blocked by me on Twitter saying things like, they're forcing me to care about Rise of Skywalker. And I'm like, hey, no one is forcing you to care about anything. Calm down. And there seems to be a sense that like the material they're making now about the sequel trilogy is bad, but the material they made, the connective tissue for the prequels, which needed an insane amount of connective tissue to make it make any sense, was good. And it's just such a degree of cognitive dissonance where like I'm not a huge sequel trilogy fan, but I'm also able to see that like there's this sense that what happened with the Disney movies was some sort of like tragedy, and I am old enough to remember the prequels and being a child and being told that Star Wars had been ruined. And so it's not for me a situation where like I was an adult by the time this movie came out and I wasn't the target audience for them, and I didn't connect them in the way that people did, but there's nothing wrong with that. And there are aspects of them that I want more information about. And
you're right on the point.
Yeah, the Exegol stuff, like I love weird Sith shit. Like my favorite part of Rise of Skywalker is the chanting Sith Eternal. I'm like, yes, this is so cool.
Just like
it's just like I love like there are pieces of world building there that I think are fascinating and are worth fleshing out. And I think this sort of violent backlash to what Star Wars has always done, which is fills in the gaps in other material, is just what they do. And I think, in terms of what I would be interested in seeing, I don't even really know what that would look like at this point, because I haven't rewatched the sequels in a really long time, and I think I need to sort of sit down and reevaluate what I want from them in going forward, because a lot of what I'm interested in is stuff that they're doing right now, building towards the sequel. So like the stuff I'm most interested in is the New Republic and how the New Republic was unable to recognize the threat of the First Order, and leading to Leia having to because it's a different type of political problem where you have a government who's sort of unwilling to recognize a threat. And I think that's really interesting. So I've already got some of that stuff with like books like Bloodline, but
Bloodline's
also
great.
the weird cloning stuff. I love the weird Frankenstein like stuff. I think it's really fun. I just taught Frankenstein a couple weeks ago, and like reading that with my class and like looking at the connections there. And I just think it's so fun to get into the interesting philosophical questions of like trying to create life in
the
this
morality of that.
Yeah, and I think that that's something I'm super interested in. So if you were to give me third Sith acolyte, like the app, for example, but like not a sequel's acolyte, like
that could be fun.
People on Mustafar that Kylo Ren runs through. What's their deal? What were they doing on Mustafar? Like, I need to know cultists. Tell me more about the cultists.
So I can tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, but
they're just defending Vader's castle, basically.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know, but that's something I want more of. So, I don't even know where you go from the sequel trilogy, because the Sith are functionally extinct, and so I don't have the creative capabilities to create a new type of enemy. So I don't know. I truly don't know where to go from there. So I'm open to anything, but I'm really interested in like the lead up to the sequels in terms of
I agree.
we're getting there. So
no, yeah, absolutely.
But I also want to say something you said earlier, the very tiny thing. I found out recently that the whole Pablo Hidalgo thing, he was defending Star Wars theory.
Mm-hmm.
And once I found that out, I was like this fandom burst because it's like a whole, it just really hit home to me how like sometimes we need to just go touch some grass. Like it was a sarcastic response. It was a sarcastic response to someone who's making fun of theory. And he was like, oh, I guess emotions aren't for sharing. Like jokingly, what is the point of Star Wars if not to have this reaction? And everybody took it out of context. And so that just to me is really emblematic of like all of this new stuff coming up with the sequels, where like people just have such irrational responses to it that it's crazy.
Absolutely. This community can be the worst and it can be the best. And I feel like that's a very good hitting point to end on. Guys, lovely guests. Thank you for coming on. It was such an honor to have you guys on, and it was great conversation. I knew this was gonna happen with you two, because I knew Mandalore. Like when I was doing this, I was like, okay, first I know I gotta get Julia, because like Satine Obi-Wan is her thing, and then Beth with her Mando knowledge. I was like, yep, this is the pairing. This is what works. You guys did an amazing job. Thank you again for coming on. Julia, where can the good people follow you on the socials?
I'm at Julia Christine 77 on TikTok, and I'm also one half of Star Wars English Class podcast. We are recording a new episode on Sunday about intertextuality. So it's been a while. Fern and I are both teachers, so like this part of the semester is just a nightmare where we're not able to get a lot done, but we will have a new episode coming out soon. Star Wars English Class on Twitter and TikTok as well, but mostly just on TikTok is where you can find me. And like I said, I'm going to be doing a bunch of Obi-Wan content coming up once the semester is over, basically cluing people into like, if you're just kind of a movies fan and you want to get caught up before the show comes out, what you need to kind of, if you want to watch and read the stuff, what you can watch and read. So yeah.
We will be having both of you on. We will be doing a roundtable for Obi-Wan, for the first episode of Obi-Wan and the final episode of Obi-Wan.
Okay.
So it'd be kind of like a roundtable. So you guys, there will be multiple people on.
Died as a result of the show, I will be here.
We will make sure that you are not dead.
Yeah.
you are not. Once you've been on the show, we stay pretty close knit with our guests so that we know that they're not dead.
Good.
So we're pretty good at that.
Important.
A lot of people can attest to that. But yeah, there will be a bunch of things coming out, especially, and we'll do the same thing for Book of Boba, especially the first and the last episode for those as well. But be on the lookout for those. So these two will be back. Beth, where can the good people find you on the social medias?
Oh, you guys can find me at Mara.J.skywalker on TikTok. I'm also a co-host of something that is currently in the middle of a rebrand, and I don't want to give it away. So I'm very excited. Former Bad Batch support group, new name. But that'll be launched later this week, I think. So keep your eyes out. But yeah, that's where I am on the Clock app.
Yeah, I think it's good because if it's the title that I'm thinking of, it assumes that we are also supporting him, which I am very for. Like, I think he deserves a support group. Like, not just for us, but like he deserves the group. Like, it's, you know what I
feel
mean?
that.
Like, I feel like that's good. Like, I feel like it's like he deserves to have.
Yep.
He deserves a lot. He deserves a lot of stuff. Like, just he deserves the world.
The poor boy's been through enough.
He's been through a
needs
lot.
all the support. Char?
Well, you can find me on TikTok at CharCharJ, and I am one half of the Podwans podcast. And we go live every Thursday, but in this case, we went live today because of the holiday where you eat a lot and you talk to a lot of people. And
yes.
Maybe, depending on what you like, you watch some football. But
yep, absolutely.
Here and CharCharJ on TikTok. That's where you can find.
You can find us at the Podwans podcast on TikTok, at Podwans on Twitter, and at the Podwans Pod on Instagram. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for coming. You all are great. Thank you for supporting us. If it weren't for you guys, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. Thanks to the guests that always come on, and especially to YouTube, because I know obviously we're in the middle of a holiday, and we appreciate you guys taking time out of families and stuff like that. So I really, really appreciate it. And for everybody else, we will be back on Thursday with another special guest talking about Senate murders. But until then, may the force be with you. Lighten for life.
May the force be with you always. Have a great rest of your day.